Where'd you get that hat?
Allen's Boots on Congress.
It's an institution.
They are one of my favorite places. So the belts from the Dallas stockyards. These boots are from the stockyards. I got the Lucchese. Thank you.
Fantastic boots.
I got the ostrich skins.
Yeah.
They're at home. A tiny bit tight. I have a wide foot. So right now I've got a boot stretcher and they stretch so nice. I got nice little oil to put on them so it protects the leather. But right now they're home getting stretched out so that I can wear them, Kirk, to DCAC next week.
Attaboy.
This is from Allen's Boots. They fitted it. They steamed it for me. A gentleman named Delbert helped me pick out the boots, and he's a former rancher. And he said, "Young man, if they don't fit you right now, they ain't never gonna fit you."
Well, you have a big fat brain, right? So how big is a hat to fit a brain that big?
7 1/4.
That's 7 1/4. Makes some more sense. Well, listen, we're getting started right now. So do me a favor. Why don't you introduce yourself? A lot of people know this guy. Some of us have.
Before I do, have you been to Guero's? Is that a place that you visited next to Allen's, a block away, South Congress?
I have. Do you like that place?
Love that place.
I love the ambiance. Not a huge fan of the salsa.
Really?
Yeah, because listen, man, I'm spoiled. There's a lot of cool salsa places in town.
So I used to go there from 95 to 02.
Did you go to UT?
No, Creighton in Omaha.
But, oh man, we have a lot to unpackage from that thing. But you're Omaha, then you came out here. You were in Texas for a bit.
Yeah, my wife grew up in Amarillo. Father was a cattle trader. She played volleyball at Creighton in San Francisco before that. So she was a stud in our family. She was being recruited. They played in Austin in a tournament. Father-in-law was bored. So he took a drive into Hill Country, bought a place in Horseshoe Bay.
Beautiful area.
So that's where I landed in 95. Before we got married, didn't have a job. Nice. My dad said, don't go without a job. Figure it out before you get married. I did not listen. So but I landed in Horseshoe Bay. Yeah, it worked out. So,
all right. Well, look, I do like Horseshoe Bay. That's basically the LBJ, right? So you get it's a constant water.
Yep.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
That's fantastic. But to that end, why don't you introduce who you are now?
Yeah. Ken Moreano, I guess, co-founder, CEO, president of Scott Data.
So that's a lot too. So why don't you introduce yourself as though you needed to do that?
First of all, I'm so grateful to be here, Kirk, and with you, Ken, as well. Hi, everybody. There's a lot of cameras here. I like to make sure that we talk to the audience, that you know that we're not just here, but we're here for you as well. Sure. I'm Bill Kleyman, co-founder and CEO of Apolo.us, and I'm sure we're going to get into who we are and what we do. Proud to be a part of this wonderful industry, to work with these extraordinary human beings outside of my day job at Apollo. I work with wonderful organizations like Infrastructure Masons and Nomad Futurists, trying to educate folks and get more wonderful human beings into this.
Well, you're also you write for Data Center Knowledge and Frontier. You write for a lot of stuff. You write for Uptime. I mean,
I do. So contributing editor to Data Center Knowledge, Data Center Frontier Information Week. And I am the AFCOM Data Center World Program Chair, which was here in Austin for 3 wonderful years. Now it's in Washington, D.C. And yes, I get a chance to work with an extraordinary group of folks to put that conference on, the sessions, the keynotes, and just, again, it's a wonderful community to continue to support. So yes, and I do sleep. I do get some rest every once in a while. I try to.
I don't know, man. It's hard to keep up. You're everywhere. You're active. But I mean, it's an honor to have both of you here.
Likewise, honored to be here.
Yeah, we fell into orbit with each other about 4 or 5 years ago. I don't think you remember that, but it's perfect to see that this whole thing's coming together. So, one, I got a chance to see you speak at Data Center USA, Data Cloud USA. Is that what it's called? Data Cloud?
Data Center World.
Data Center. No. But that was at Vegas, or that was in DC this year, and I went to that because you were the chair of that.
Yes.
But you were speaking this morning.
Yes. We go to so many conferences that they sort of start to blur together. Yeah. Yes, Data Cloud.
Data Cloud. So I'm in town. That's here in Austin, and I got a chance to go watch you. You were moderating a panel, and you guys were going deep on AI data centers. So it's a real exciting opportunity to have you both here, and I'll tell you why. So the podcast itself has been something that we've been trying to adapt and evolve at a pretty great pace since we really got into the conference side of it, right? And we're pivoting a little bit on the conference side. It's going to be taking on another life of its own, and there'll be a lot of information to follow on that. I'm really excited about this year's DCAC. We're breaking tons of records. But I really am using the podcast and the conference to talk about and promote things that are leading edge, right? So I have someone that's coming to talk about hydrogen data centers, but there's a different nuance to a little bit of everything, right? And we want this platform to be something that gives a big voice to things that are emerging, because the industry reinvents and iterates so quickly, right? Yeah. And when we started talking about this, it was probably a couple months ago, maybe something like that, and we were trying to figure out and scramble, how do we make this work, right? Because I want to hear more about what it is what you guys are doing and what you were doing when we were talking about it. I was like, Yeah, it almost sounds too good to be true. So there's a lot of things about it that I'm like, hey, break it down, because a lot of people are going to be, a lot of our industry resides within some sort of construct of limitations that they think that our industry is capable of doing, but they don't realize.
We talked about that, gaps in our industry where there's puzzle pieces that are missing. And right now the challenge is the puzzle is such a blurry thing that we're not sure what pieces are missing. Sorry, go ahead, Kirk.
No, but listen, lead us to that. Both of you guys, this is your guys' podcast, and I really want you guys to unpackage these things. I'm just going to ask some questions on behalf of the other listeners and people that get to watching this. But why don't you tell us how we got here?
So I'm going to give you, this is my boss quote that I've had since his passing. It's 3 years ago. On the 25th will be his anniversary. Walter Scott Jr. passed on September 25th. It says, "Don't tell me why we can't do it. Tell me how we can do it." That's why we're here.
That's the language of a true innovator, right?
Yep.
So pioneers tend to speak boldly, and it sounds like it's something that resonated and inspired with you guys. Why don't you start with how did this challenge, this call to action that you have, it radiated something within, that's a Scott family, is that what it is?
Yeah.
So before we get into who that is in Scott Data Centers, how did you guys connect? How did you two connect?
The truth is that I never try to miss an opportunity to get to Austin. I love this town.
All right.
I mentioned I was in the Hill Country in Austin proper from 95 to 02.
Okay.
2 Mays ago, so what, 23?
Yeah.
Data Center World was here.
Yeah.
I brought our operations lead and our BMS specialist, brought their wives and told them they could do what they want, but I am insisting they eat at Guero's and Salt Lick.
Okay. Two institutions.
And by the way, we were going to a conference.
Okay.
Keynote opens up and Bill gets up on stage. And what resonated is Bill saying that colos are not ready for AI workloads. Colos cannot handle the AI workloads. 20, 30, 40
How long
kW.
ago was this?
2 years, 16 months,
Yeah,
roughly.
this was May
of 23.
2023, and you know what I do in this industry, right? So I do get a chance to see a very unique part of this space, and this was the time, just to let you know. So let's pause on that, right? So I'm up on stage. It actually was wearing a black Stetson.
You were in all black.
Yeah, it was
I
all
remember
black.
that one.
Johnny Cash type flag.
Silver belly nails.
That's right. And what happened was, so Switch Data Centers was an extraordinary experience for me, right? I was there from 2019 to December of 22, a part of the executive team that saw the company go from $4.5 billion publicly traded to selling to DigitalBridge and IFM in December of 22, ultimately for $11 billion. And my goodness, I learned a ton from Rob and the team on how to scale and create a business like that. But after we parted ways in January of 23, one of my dearest friends, Yuri, who I've known for 23 years, he and I go way back. He's like, "Bill, I got this company that I want to buy and bring to the United States, but I'm not going to do it unless you take over as CEO." And working with Switch and all of this experience, I was a little tired. I was like, let me take a little break. I had a wonderful experience, and that break lasted a week because Yuri's like, "It's not an AI company, man. It's an AI software tool for the data center space." And what I quickly realized is, oh my gosh, at the time called Neuro, now Apolo, I don't know how else to say this, is the industry's only true multi-tenant AI and MLOps layer. And just
so break that down for sailors like me. Right? I went to public school.
Think the Amazon services layer,
Yeah.
but I have it and I can white label it. So any facility that ultimately doesn't just want to have gear, that actually wants to create a service architecture, so network, storage, compute, GPU, CPU, and monetize it, that's what I have. My closest competitors, I would say, are like Run AI, for example, but the difference is that they were built to support the enterprise. We were built natively for the data center and telco to support the enterprise.
When you say the data center, are you talking about operators or just the enterprise end users within the operators?
Data center. So my customers are endpoint facilities like Scott Data. And I promise we'll get into that because he's going to take over the story here in just a second.
No, we have to build up the framework.
We do. This is just starting it out. So I find this technology, right? And well, let's say they find me. And this is January of 23. And from January to May, this is where the wall of ChatGPT is exploding. This is where it's starting to all come down. And I'm starting to realize, oh my gosh, like this industry is woefully unprepared to capture this new emerging market, right? Operating at really low density levels, not having any real software tools to capture a part of it. And my goal wasn't to just like, raise any sort of alarms. It was to get up on stage and say, us as an industry need to prepare for this because density is coming. Liquid cooling is going to be here very soon. And actually, no, it wasn't 23. It was 22. There we go. It was May 22, a couple of years ago.
Yeah, that's right.
I forgot what year it was
Time
for
flies.
a second. I
Yes.
know.
Excuse me.
And so we started to see at that time it was GPT-2 and some of these earlier generative pre-trained transformers coming out. And so we transitioned our organization into something that needed to support the data center. And so here I am up on stage, understanding what's about to happen in this industry and trying to convey to people, you need to be prepared. I don't know what this ultimately looks like. Obviously, I didn't have a crystal ball. I didn't know what GPT-3 was going to look like, but I knew that our traditional architecture was about to be shaken to its core in terms of how we're going to be developing it. So you need to be ready. And in the audience was Ken Moreano, and he heard it. And what happened?
If I'm not mistaken, you walked out to "You Got Another Thing Coming." I remember that blaring.
Oh, is that your music? Is that your walkout theme
I
music?
think that
is that what
was
we need to
what
do
was
for
playing.
DCAC this year?
I think
it was
that's
like
what
Judas
it was.
Priest or something. I'm looking around
Nice.
like, what
You
is
got
going
another
on?
thing. What a great jam for
Yeah.
that. Very appropriate.
Well, this year I had a good one.
It
too.
matches the
It's-
cowboy hat as long as it was black.
This year it's Freebird. So
Oh, is it really?
yeah, that's 100%.
Nice. That's a hopeful, optimistic. All right. So Ken,
I paid attention. I messaged Bill, I think LinkedIn. I said, we've been ready since 2011.
all right. So let's back that train up. So tell people about your business. So people that have, because you're geographically
Middle of the country, Omaha, Nebraska.
one market, yeah.
Yeah.
Nebraska. Okay. And just unpackage it for people that don't know. There's a lot of, assume that there's some massively sophisticated people on here that are listening, they're armed to the teeth. They know just as much about you as you put out.
Sure.
And then there's people that haven't seen the ball since kickoff because they maybe operate only in Virginia or the Pacific Northwest.
For sure.
And they don't get to operate sometimes in the central region. So tell us about your data center company.
So the, I guess day one for me was May 28 of 2002. I won't bore you with the history before that. We can get into that if you'd like.
But what was the genesis behind you going there? And I mean, what is your story? Give me
All right,
5 minutes of that.
I'll give you the 5 minutes. Met my wife at Creighton University. She's a
Where's
stud
that
in our
at?
family, Omaha, Nebraska.
Okay.
She grew up in Amarillo, cattle trading family. Played volleyball at San Francisco, transferred to Creighton. That's a whole nother story.
San Francisco to Creighton. So she went from California to Ohio or
Omaha,
Nebraska.
Nebraska.
Okay.
They did not have volleyball, but it's a Jesuit school. Her credits transferred. A year and a half in, she gets a call by the AD, come to our office. They're interviewing a coach that recruited her in high school. She ends up being the first player in the current program back in '94, two-time captain. They're actually ranked 9th, I think, in the country. So
Really?
coach has been there as long as we've moved back to Omaha. But we met in '95, came to the Hill Country. I worked at Horseshoe Bay. The Jaffe family hired me. I helped develop a wellness operation there. And I came across Woodway Treadmill, which was a true ergometer this is in 96, 97. And it's actually a CRT monitor sitting on a treadmill. So it was Peloton before Peloton.
Oh, okay.
They had 4 of them, touchscreen and a television.
Those are the ones with the tubes, and you knock on
get
its
kicked.
glass,
It's
and
like
it goes
the
ding,
old
ding, ding.
school TV.
Yeah, just in
So I used to hack in, try to network them. I would break it, call the developer was in Batavia, Illinois. He built the software. Eventually that became my startup. This new thing in 98, the internet, I thought we could web enable these and demonstrate adherence and compliance remotely for disease and elite athletes. So I had a 4.5-year run of, again, a good friend of mine, former employee, and looking back, I probably should have worked for him. Dan Zeman, who trained Greg LeMond for his tour wins.
Oh, wow.
Dan was one of our employees. Greg was on our advisor board. Anyway, he said today it was Peloton before Peloton. So I raised capital, got my head kicked in, hired management team. We didn't quite have alignment. Woke up one day, we were upside down financially, raised bridge financing, sold my home, put the money into business to keep it alive. My wife was substitute teaching to keep food on the table. We had 2 young boys, 2.5 and newborn. And randomly, I get a call from Omaha, Nebraska, where I'd gone to school, and a buddy of mine said, hey, there's an incubator starting. They're trying to grow some innovation here. Throw your name in the hat. A week later, I'm in Omaha. 3 days into that, I'm in Kiewit Plaza, which is a 15-story building. On the 14th floor, Mr. Buffett offices. On the 15th floor, Walter Scott Jr. office. He ran Kiewit Construction, founder and chairman of Level 3 Communication. And he looked at me and said, tell me about yourself. So I gave him the dirty details of my background. That evening, he hired me.
No kidding. Were you at dinner when he hired you? Were you?
At the airport here in Austin, flying home, thinking I was being the good husband, and the phone rang. I clicked over. I had a Sprint flip phone. They offered me a
love
job.
those phones, actually.
Said, I got to ask my wife. I click over, and she's like, what are you, crazy? Don't come home. Call them back. Accept the job. If you don't accept it, don't bother coming home. Different, colorful language, but that was generally the message.
Nice message.
Yeah. So I started in 2002.
There was the whole family out there, I guess?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So we raised our boys there. They were born, though, next to UT. So we got a place special here in our heart for Longhorn country and middle of, well, Texas generally.
A lot of military in Omaha, though, right?
Offutt Air Force Base, yeah.
My dad flew in another.
Yeah. So the first building was, I think there were 4 startup companies.
Is Scott, though, associated to any universities or education platforms?
It's well, we've worked with a number of universities, MIT, Stanford, Carnegie Mellon over the years in innovation activity, but it's principally because it's in Nebraska. It collaborates quite a bit with University of Nebraska System, Med Center, Nebraska, Omaha, Lincoln.
And from an innovation perspective, were they giving you workloads that came from a technology perspective that mirrored those types of environments or those types of industries?
This was all startup, blue sky tech. This was not data center at all.
So what was the focus of your blue sky, though? Were you trying to solve for something right off the bat?
A lot of it was bench lab research to market and trying to validate that there's a market opportunity for these innovations and trying to really leverage research and young up and coming grad students,
like a
undergrad.
tech incubator.
Yeah, there was actually, it was a tech incubator. It's still called the Scott Technology Transfer and Incubator Center. And Mr. Scott scholarshiped about 200 kids, full rides. At the time, I think their average ACT was 34, so pretty smart
they're
kids.
All a bunch of smart kids.
Yeah, 50-pound brains like Bill, unlike me.
Yeah.
Followed his vision and said, okay, well, I think we can get after this. The building is 60,000 feet. It's really an office building with laboratories.
Was it purpose-built, or did you inherit that building?
I inherited that building.
Okay, so you took that building, and as you had to drive innovation through it, you had to iterate that building multiple times.
Yes. The third floor was built out in a small area with some cubicles for startups. The rest of the building was core and shell.
Okay.
It was designed to have a duplicate flip. We expanded that, so from 60 to 80,000 feet, grew partnerships, a lot of intelligence, defense related. The Kiewit Institute, Peter Kiewit Institute, part of the University of Nebraska, has a national security agency certified AI or
it's like an AI SCIF
information assurance cybersecurity program that they have designated for years. So kids are clearable in the middle of the country. So it was low-hanging fruit for them. So we really had people like Raytheon, SAIC, Booz Allen Hamilton, pretty big names.
And they were using that lab for what?
Research.
PR, okay.
Interns. Most of it wasn't classified work. They did that at the military base, but there's a lot of business development, mainly engineering and software development. What's the intent? Was
the whole intent, day one, minute one, to be an environment to support high density or high performance computing type of environments?
No. So what happens is we're evolving, and we have a request from a number of these defense and intel contractors to build a SCIF.
Okay.
So we're heading down that path. And
how long ago was that?
This would have been, so I started in 2002. This was between 2004 and 2005.
Okay.
So we're starting to build, beginning to build design. I was involved with the original design, the build, and General Cartwright, who at the time ran Strategic Air Command, called and said he had a collaborative project between academia, government, and industry to really combat terrorism.
Okay, so he was the business to justify the SCIF?
Yes.
Okay.
So sort of. I had letters of intent from about 8 different contractors, but the head of Strategic Command called Mr. Scott and said, we want to do it there in your building. Walter called me and said, Ken, you have a PR challenge. We're going to accommodate the commander. So I soft-shoed my conversations with the folks that had signed up. We then built out a 50,000 square foot SCIF, which was also a data center. At the height of the program, it housed 150 people, had compute, telecom, crypto, storage, so all the alphabet soup of IT, as well as classified telecommunication networks.
Gotcha.
I carry clearance because of that project.
Okay.
So that was the impetus. It was the Department of Defense. So it is actually a purpose-built bunker, 16-inch cast-in-place concrete walls, double T concrete roof, anchored 60 feet down.
Is it adjacent to your primary building?
It's probably 500 feet from where I office, maybe a little bit more. Bill's been there. Cool. Raised out of floodplain, anchored 60 feet down, can handle 250-mile-per-hour winds. It's a concrete block.
Is all the the equipment yard inside or under the roof?
Everything's within building envelope. It's all protected.
Yeah. It's a very unique design, and this is me coming from obviously from Switch data centers, right? Yeah. I'm gonna come out and say I didn't think after working for Rob that I would ever see an infrastructure facility
More resilient.
or secure.
Yeah.
Until I walked through Scott Data Center. And for everybody listening, please find myself and Kirk as well if you haven't already on LinkedIn.
Bill does a great job touring our place.
So the reason Ken says that I did shoot a couple of videos of the facility, and you've never seen an envelope design until you see this thing. I mean, it is encased in concrete. They have 20,000 gallons of fuel encased in concrete. And what they do with that fuel is they cycle through it once a week, 52 times a year, as opposed to just doing it a couple times
Polishing,
a year.
filtering it, making sure it's pristine for our generators.
And usable, right? And so that the generators are also inside the building. Literally quite everything is inside in this envelope, and the barriers go as high up as they go down. And all the conduit and power is 7 feet encased in concrete underground as well.
Diverse, physically separated, protected.
But this is like concurrently maintainable
tier 3 uptime,
tier
design,
yeah,
and construction.
And so anyway, I know we're talking about it. Check out the videos that us talking about. I don't think it does it justice, but it is an extraordinary.
You post those on your LinkedIn?
They are on LinkedIn.
Perfect.
Yeah,
We have to back up just a little bit, if I may.
Yeah.
So government was there for 5 years. We expanded in 2008, 30,000 feet for private sector. From the outside, it looks like one building. Interior, it's 2 separate buildings, mechanical, electrical, no internal passageway for any people because it was skiff, right?
Built like the Faraday cage around it with the concrete and everything. Yeah.
So 2 16-inch concrete walls separate into 2 buildings, 50,000 feet from the government, private sector. We had, Walter used to say, think of an egg crate. So these 1,500 square foot rooms that were all skiffs, deck to deck, certified walls. But private sector, highly regulated. So financial services, healthcare, medical insurance, those type of folks. I have a letter on my wall. Stratcom writes a letter and says, thank you for being a great partner, but we have a new commander. We're heading to the base. So they were going to vacate, and the government can do that.
Oh, so they pulled the plug and went right back onto Offutt or whatever it is?
Offutt.
Yep.
So Mr. Scott called and said, we have a white elephant. What are we going to do? So what we described as far as tier 3, we had third-party validation with government intel. We had a 5-year run. We repurposed. That's when we added a 20-megawatt plant. That's when we added what Bill was describing. That's when we gutted really any people space, enhanced, went to high density. So at the time, this would have been...
Yeah, what was the density you're operating?
2010, 2011, when we remodeled. So we went from probably, at the time, the conversation was watts per square foot.
Yeah.
So we're probably 50 to 60 to north of 250, 300. So it was a significant jump. It was also cloud doing away with colo. So I'd come back from traveling to different data centers and I'd sit with Mr. Scott and I'd say, we got to upgrade the power and the cooling. And he'd say, well, I'm hearing differently from the company I'm the chairman of. They're saying you don't need as much and cloud's really taking over.
True.
I would leave. I'd come back and say, here's more data. I'd leave, come back. Eventually he relented. We built a 20 megawatt plant for 50,000 feet.
Okay, so that's when you really started getting into high performance computing, it sounds like.
So the intent originally was we had very specific...
I don't know that math. What was that, 400 or 500 watts per square foot? What are we talking about?
Well, yeah, we can handle, just traditional colo, 12, 15, 20 kW in a traditional cabinet.
Yeah, that's what you're operating without water?
Yeah, correct. That's just air. So, right, we have containment, closed loop chiller system, raised floor. Mm-hmm. But again, this is in 12 when we got certified. Mm-hmm. So we opened up for business, and the intent was, so I'd come across PhotoBucket. PhotoBucket was a photo sharing company. We were late. Well, they were early. We couldn't accelerate our construction. Their requirement was 36 cabinets, 10 kW a cabinet. This is in 2010. So we're like, okay, this dog hunts. Like density is a thing. So the intent was build for the future. Mm-hmm. So if somebody lands equipment, likely they'll have higher density. They won't have to relocate if we're built to handle their growth. Mm-hmm. We've had a company contract from 60 cabinets to 30 to now 2. Our revenue looks the same, but the density changed, and there's a lot of virtualization services we built on top.
We're going to talk about that.
Yep.
That's something that makes them fundamentally different as the services, and we'll touch on that because I think it's really important.
So the short version of this long way around the barn, from 11, 12 when we remodeled to about 19, we were growing as a colo, and we're one location. Nobody really knew us. We couldn't advertise because of the government, right? So we had no sign, no marketing, no nothing.
Yeah.
So we came, I'd been there since 2002. This is 2012. So 2012 was like day one, though we've operated continuously without an outage, never a customer interruption.
10-year-old startup.
Exactly. We had a pretty good backstop as far as financial support, and we were profitable. In 04, 05, we turned the corner. When I started, we were subsidized. by the Charitable Foundation. That's our parent organization. I guess a plug for the charitable vision of Walter Scott. Our net revenue funds STEM education.
Okay.
So there's no dividend. There's no, nobody dips
You're
into
just
the
trying
kitty.
to raise more nerds. Got it. That's good.
More nerds. We fund a lot of nerds.
Gotta have nerds.
That's right. So we embarked on growing Colo. In 19, we established technical services. Pandemic was a great example. So people would call saying, we're not going to dispatch anybody to the building. Can you push a button, move a cable? So that really validated what we had been pushing for as far as smart hands, remote hands, logistics, a number of things.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have people trained on that, or did you have to go hire people that
We
had
had to
that
hire.
experience? Yeah.
So I was employee 1. We had 5 for a while. Around 2010, I think we had 8. At the time we started developing services, we declared we had 12. And in the last, since we encountered Bill and we met and developed our relationship, we've doubled our size. So we're a modest 20 with 3 outstanding college interns.
Okay.
So
cool.
we're a thin shop by design.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, for one data center, that's not a small number, a small head count. Seems like it's pretty effective. In fact, you could probably.
Yeah, we're pretty lean, but we handle all mechanical, electrical in-house. We handle all IT, managed services in-house. We handle...
Why is that, by the way? Why do you not outsource that risk associated to that to someone else?
That's
You did
exactly why.
Okay, so
I
let's hear it.
maintain our people need to have a PhD in our systems. If we've built it, we designed it, built it, and operated from day one. No one knows our infrastructure better than we know. So I'd rather look a customer in the eye and say, hey, it's on us. We own it, right? I'm not going to point the finger at a third-party provider. So we handle soup to nuts, IT, and operations.
And there's I don't want to say reason behind this madness, because I don't think there's any madness behind it. I think there's definitely a reason for you to want to own everything from, we'll call it from watt to token. We'll get into what that means in a second, but it's also very unique. I mean, there's intellectual capital that these guys know,
Yep.
what they know from their product set and from the actual infrastructure that's irreplaceable, right? There's people you can outsource it to, but what they're doing right now is pretty unique in terms of the offering and the service, and especially sort of in the industry right now. Managed services in the data center colocation space is rare, right? Because of the risk potentially, right? When I was at Switch and even others, for example, managed services stop when the Ethernet cable is plugged into the firewall. That's it. The rest is yours. The rack is yours. Everything is yours. That model worked, still works, and will continue to work for a very long
For
time,
sure.
right?
Absolutely.
But the reality is, and I think this is where we start to segue the conversation a little bit, right? I'm what, a geriatric millennial, and they call me
I heard
that,
you
right?
say that. Yeah.
And it's amusing to an extent, right? But that means I did grow up through like the internet age, the .coms and all of that. And I remember at the onset of the internet, basically what we experienced in the data center industry is the hyperscalers wrote the rules, right? And we were relegated with traditional workloads like VMware, Citrix, all this traditional stuff, right? And all of a sudden, we're starting to see this exact same thing happen right now, right? Where we're being relegated with these back-end workloads and almost in sometimes being taken advantage of by the hyperscalers while they write the rules and make all the money. And a lot of it revolves around a shifting mindset and model in the data center business. And it's uncomfortable for a lot of folks to be pushed into a space where they're just not ready or not used to moving in such an agile fashion. And so part of what he's done and created, and there's other data centers like him, believe it or not, and I hope you're listening.
You hear that? You hear what he just said?
Yeah, there's others, but it's in a good thing. And I joke around this, right? You need 2 things to be successful in today's market. It's power and bravery. And I think bravery means an understanding of how deep into those services do you want to go, how much of this technology process and even revenue process do you want to own, and how much of your business, or I would say the megawatts or gigawatts that you're chasing, that you're giving up to companies that you're not really sure exactly what they're doing with all these GPUs. So in Ken's case, of what he's done and what he's created is a complete managed services architecture, not unlike what the big hyperscalers do, just for now, without the software layer that supports a lot of the AI, ML, all the crazy things that we're hearing develop right now. Now we're going to dive into that. Now he's wrapping up this conversation. The managed services piece, I think, is absolutely critical. We're almost at the cool, Bill. How did you get involved with Ken, and what are you guys doing together? So I think we're almost there.
We're almost there, but so listen, this is a highly sophisticated data center built for government, so it's very protected, very secure, very skiffy.
Yep.
go internal for everything. It sounds like everything is no outsourcing.
Professional mechanical electrical. So we had Alvine Engineering in Omaha was our MEP for
The engineer record or something. Okay.
Exactly. For the central plant, we recommissioned after 5 years of running our plant, full recommission. So we engage OEMs, Mitsubishi for our UPS and so on, CAT. But our team handles the lion's share of preventative maintenance. Design was ours.
But you went from government, high performance environments to commercial environments
Yes.
that were going at a fairly respectable density. I mean, now we talk about those densities. Remember when 20 kW rack was like, there's no chance. And now we're like, people pick their teeth with 20 kW rack now, right?
But we still have 4 and 6 in our shop. Like there's still little guys in there with 4 and 6.
No kidding.
Yeah.
So, so now you've done that. Then you added services around managed services. And like you said, I mean, you convinced your founder that you needed 20 megawatts of retail colo capacity,
Yes.
right? So you did that. So now you're offering retail colo in competition with cloud, and you have managed services, which also falls in competition with cloud. And you guys ended up at a high performance AI environment, somehow using former Neo, now Apolo.
Apollo, yeah.
All right. So that's the part where I think you were saying, hey, we're getting to this point. Now we understand what that physical environment looks like.
Right.
We understand where this came from, where you come from. And then now you're trying to solve an existential threat of this industry. He says it's courage or bravery and people or power.
Power and bravery.
And I say it's power and people, which is basically the same thing. It's power and people. We can't solve for power unless we have the right people. You can't solve for power unless you have the right bravery, right? So we're talking about the same thing. And now I want to understand, like, Nebraska is a very unique market for our industry, right? So you're double
we
and
put
triple.
Omaha on the map.
Right.
Absolutely.
It is very unique. Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about how you went from, hey man, we shifted from one client portfolio to the other. We have a very versatile fabric of MEP, and we could solve for this and this as an alternative to cloud. And then now you're like, hey, when you saw this dude talk, because he's an order, and Bill is infectious with his
Absolutely
knowledge, right?
is. No question.
So
Absolutely.
we all like to be around him when we want to learn more shit. So my thing is now you got to that and you heard him say, hey, look, none of you are out there capable of supporting what AI is going to demand. And you
Right.
said, we've been doing it for a bit already. Really, and walk me through what that bit was, and then layer in where you guys started saying, look, no matter how great your product was, it wouldn't be as great as it would be if you had his product with it. And then that's what the value would be to the client.
Yeah. No, it's a great tee up. So going back to Walter Scott and his influence, his fingerprints are all over my career. I had 20 years under the guy as a co-founder of the data center, but my mentor, kind of like a father figure to me.
Sure.
One of his quotes, which is imprinted on my brain, is cover the downside and the upside will take care of itself. So when we capture and manage the full process, we own it. So as I said earlier, we want to have a PhD in our infrastructure, in our services, and deliver really white glove service. That's what we do. We're a one location shop, but we do pretty well. Seeing Bill, when I say we've been ready since 2011, we had the power and the cooling that a lot of people were chasing. Prime rated generators, we had
Like
20
the mechanical
megawatts.
permutation.
Exactly.
There were other things that you're forgetting as well. Like who invests in raised tile floor that can support 5,000 pounds per square foot? Like,
We have that.
yeah,
Because you were doing storage for clients. You had cloud storage or photo storage, it sounds like. So people that had large. Yeah.
heavy stuff, right? But they're expensive, right?
Oh, yeah.
Those are not, they're challenging to sometimes to put in. You got to maintain those. And they're putting that gear in like 2011 to support that level of weight. Like what's required right now.
Yeah, that's interesting. Why did you over design at that point, right?
We didn't think we were over designing. We were planning for the future.
Okay.
So Mr. Scott, not to speak for the man, I mean, rest his soul, he's been passed now, like I said, about 3 years. He was fascinated with China. And the reason is they have a 200-year plan that they're executing. I've never met anyone that had the uncanny ability to pattern recognition, look beyond the horizon, true visionary. He was incredible, once in a many lifetime type guy. So I learned from him, but part of it was, okay, how do we manage not just the next 2 or 3 years, but let's look 10 years out if we can.
Okay.
What does that world look like?
But what information, how do you analyze and interpret those market trends, in 2011 to understand that in 2014 or 2024, the densities would be at.
It wasn't one of those magical number 8 balls that you shake, but it was
I
a
use
crystal ball.
those.
Yeah, I mean, they're handy at times.
How do you think I got here?
But it was really the examples we saw. So printers row in Chicago. I was in data centers there. I think it was in Equinix. And you look at the concrete floors that they have and the slabs and the weight they can handle. So that was a data point. We're like, okay, well, that's interesting. So I spent a lot of time in Chicago, in Arizona, and Phoenix market, a little bit in Miami, in Florida, gathering insight and basically informing our decision to say, okay, we don't know what the future looks like.
Let's pause too on things because you guys met at a conference.
Yeah.
And let's put a pin in that real quick because conferences are super important for education, entertainment, and networking, right? Like I gain a lot. I sat in as soon as I heard you were going, I punched inside and I mean, you had a pretty good guest of people and they were talking about, I like the question that you had at the end, like, are we approaching a bubble? And like, you could scratch the paint on that one, but I have an opinion too, right? But I mean, those are the types of questions that you want to go to conferences and get drawn out on. And you want to be exposed to that because I'll get exposed to that same question in another conference. And after a few conferences, then you could kind of, the aperture and how I view Bill is extremely optimistic. So this man doesn't see challenges, he sees opportunities only when it comes to technology. So I'm going to this guy is hopeful and optimistic as he should be. So I'm going to expect something positive to fall out of his. Someone else who's more on the engineering, nerdy side is going to be like, well, listen, they're going to be covering the downside so the upside takes care of itself, so to speak. So there's always, for every Walt Disney, there was Roy Disney, right? And Steve Jobs had Wozniak, right? I mean, Bill Gates, Paul Allen, right? So there's always a what and a why to all these things, right? And I'm trying to understand the what and the why here because it sounds like you were building something and you didn't even realize. I mean, you sounds like you were intentionally and deliberate. The future proofing.
Several components of it. Some of it was luck,
but there was no way to interpret in 2011 or 2014 that we're going to be running at 65 kW per rack pretty soon, or higher.
There's two elements of luck here, right? That's exactly the same thing happened with Apollo when Neuro started, right? So at its inception in 2019, Neuro back then had an existential challenge. Basically, at its inception, do we build an AI and MLOps platform to support the enterprise, just like traditional organizations, or do we come out and build something that no one's ever done before, a MLOps and AI tool for data centers, operators and telcos as a complete white label architecture?
So hold on, pause. The hardest people to get to change their minds are data center owner operators.
Yeah.
Because it works and like, why would I change it, right?
We got a customer. We got an organization back then, this was before I joined, that was the size of AT&T and Verizon combined. They came to Neuro and they said, we want to compete with Amazon in the European, Asian markets. And you have a software that you can right now develop and make it white label for me. Do it. And it was like, well, someone's going to pay us, so we're going to go ahead and start this business. That's exactly what Neuro did. And within the first year or two, we're talking like positive revenue, growth happening. We're talking an organization, a technology that's tested at absolutely massive scale, supporting banks, financial services, and so on. All of a sudden actually finding success as the white label cloud architecture. Now that's all good news, right? The bad news is the company unfortunately was in Ukraine and a lot of the customers were in Russia. And so the company made an active decision. We're going to shutter where there's no way we're going to continue to support. And that's when Yuri, my friend, going back to the original conversation, took the company, moved everything IP, people, process to the United States and some in Europe as well. And we realized exactly what we had. And literally just a couple of months into this game, January 23, I joined. In March, we got our first round of funding. The ink is drying, let's just say, on our second and final round of funding. We're good, not getting another penny. But what we learned from January 23 to right now are a couple of really important things. And this is where we're going to segue into this. Number one, there's nobody else is doing this. And this is not a good thing. I was kind of hoping that there'd be somebody else who has a true ML AI platform that does what we do as a true multi-tenancy architecture.
Break that down though. So what you do, break it down again so that people understand at the software layer that you play.
Can I give a cowboy talk version?
Give me a cowboy. I'll give you the hat even.
So we have, and this is a bit of a punchline, we deployed 6 NVIDIA DGXs, 48 GPUs, H100s, and 1 cabinet. We deviated from the reference architecture.
What do those run at, like 12 kW per?
10.2 each.
10.2
rear heat exchange.
So you're talking about how many? So you're doing 60, 70 kW per rack right now?
Yes.
And with rear door heat exchange?
Yes.
I got you.
Air.
One rack?
One rack. Well,
is that 5,000 pounds too, or is that a different weight density of what you were using?
Not quite 5,000.
I got you.
But our approach is this is multi-tenant, like our colo history. In order to do multi-tenant, we need an MLOps layer. So one customer can use all 48. 48 customers can use one GPU or any version within.
So
in Cowboy Talk, that's what Bill enables for us.
So think about that, right? So we have a control plane. So again, Apollo was built for the data center to support the operator in the data center. If I were to give you a comparison, Run.ai, and the great organization, we like.
You got to have a worthy rival and everything.
We need to have a worthy rival. They can't do what we do because they were built to support the enterprise. One instance of Run.ai per enterprise that's going to be going in there. We have a control plane that allows us to be completely distributed. So multiple locations. So Scott Data Center is one of my ecosystem spots. Another one is IMHPC in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Another one's in Amsterdam at NovaServe. And a user can literally just click on a cluster and select where they're working. And as long as our control plane is there, they can continue to do their jobs wherever it is. I hate to draw this example, but it's the Amazon services layer, literally, that we developed, we created on the back end integration with everything from like ERP, CRM, billing systems, ticketing systems.
How hard's that integration though?
It was developed for it.
Okay.
We were built for that to be able to be integrated to credit system, however you want to charge that, whatever you want to create. That's the thing. It's very difficult to do network isolation, storage isolation, actual orchestration of the entire layer. The MLOps and AI architecture for us is literally for a data scientist or a team of AI specialists to come in and have all the tools that they want under their belt. This includes Llama 3.1, 405B, completely encased in a private GPT architecture that doesn't go to the cloud and allows you to leverage the biggest, most complex large language models without having to send your data through an API. Now that's very technical. The bottom line of what we've effectively created is an ecosystem, a platform, a multi-tenant platform that a data center can come out and deploy and all of a sudden own this entire process. Now, for Scott Data Center, I'm not asking them to become AI experts. We manage that layer. The ticketing system is integrated with them. All the support stuff that comes in, hey, Bill, could you fix this function? Can you edit this feature? That's all coming in through us. And our response times are very, very quick, and each customer gets hours of MLOps support every month that they could use. So they just deploy the gear and infrastructure. They own it. Now, there's a very important message here as far as why it's important to actually own this infrastructure. And then they can deliver the margins that they want. They can actually go after what we're going to talk about is a serious AI business. And we've just started to sort of scratch the surface of defining what that means. It's a revolutionary, I think, technology. It's very unique. But again, it was built for this specific function and purpose. In 2019, did we know that this technology just so happens to be the foundational factory for everything that we're doing in AI, except that it's also multi-tenant? We had no idea. We got lucky.
2019, we thrust into services. 2021, we deliberately migrate from our ERP to a consumption-based, more AWS type consumption-based infrastructure.
How do you sell it like that then? So you're selling it like a managed service. You're not selling it like co-location by a KW then, it sounds
correct. Well, we do have some HPC colo as well, bringing their own chips, their own GPUs.
Okay.
But we're very deliberate. ERP, so we can integrate into a consumption-based offering. Storage as a service, we interviewed 12, 13 different providers. We landed on Vast Data, which was a great win. They're an outstanding company. We went with Oknos as far as our network. So a group out of Santa Clara. So open architecture, disaggregated network. So basically hot swappable devices, but the software layer is what really runs the network.
When you were designing that architecture, what were you designing it for specifically? A vertical of industry or just a density perspective?
Density and consumption-based services. That was forward-looking. So Dominic Romeo came from a competitor, but he was also one of the original scholarship kids that are funding scholarships. He was in class number 2, and we convinced him to join our team and lead our services development. He started with storage, then moved into network. Actually, he started with network and then moved into storage. I come back in May, so we're rewinding again in 22.
Yeah.
March of that year, we had an informal advisory group of CIO customers, large companies. One of the questions we asked, AI, is this a thing? And it was more or less yeah, we're aware. So there's some conversations at the board level.
They didn't understand the
We got a few years later. We'll deal with it in the future. I come back in May, same fellas. How quickly can you have infrastructure? I came back and said, we are going.
So-
We need to do this.
So let's talk about this. So Ken took the time to do market validation, to do customer validation. And whenever a data center approaches us, and by the way, what's the ideal type of partner that we work with? We'll talk about the data centers. They'll approach us and they'll say, how do I get started? My challenge to them is like, if you're asking this question, you're already a little late, but to really get started and get comfortable, ask your tenants, ask your customers, if I put this infrastructure in, will you come to me? And we learned very quickly, that these customers, they want to stay in his facility. They want to stay with him. They want data locality, data gravity, as they say, right? They wanted to do AI where the data lives. The biggest challenge right now is that, all right, Ken puts those GPUs in, right? How do you monetize that?
That's what I was trying to figure out.
Backing up a minute.
Yeah, please.
To your point on the customer discovery. So we follow lean or the evidence-based approach. So we don't sell. We gather information, insight, find those pain points, validate across enough data sets to say, okay, enough of our customers are feeling this pain. Let's pursue a solution to resolve that pain. That's been our ethos, our history.
No, that makes a business case to justify delivering on a very specific product or service, but it doesn't explain how you monetize it.
Right. So that was the starting point. The other piece, which we both, I think, collectively learned over the last couple of years,
You're pioneers. The first ones through the wall on this stuff is going to get bloody, it seems like, at this stuff, right? So
yeah, but
this is a future thing that we're talking about right here. So it's really important for us to unpackage this because other people are listening. They're going to be trying to look, there's another you that's listening who's like, man, I have this,
and we can be helpful to the other me or whoever else out there that needs to learn what do they do with their existing infrastructure to have this capability or a version of the capability.
I would say if there was a bookmark in this podcast, this is it, because we're about to dive in, like how we monetize this, what we learned,
and what it's replacing,
and the dangers.
That's it.
We're going to talk about the risk, and yes, Bill Kleyman's usually very positive, but we need to discuss this both for my love of this industry and also just to put an awareness on there. And I've been on a couple stages now where we discuss this, but we'll get there when we get there.
Based on evidence. I mean, we're gathering real data, hearing from customers, and there are clear examples. We have fantastic partners in what we're calling our AI platform offering. Excuse me. We don't train our own model. We own the GPUs. It's private, secure, isolated in our shop. But what we learned is there are many examples of people either trying to beat supply chain, buying their own GPUs. They can't land them. They can't plug them in. They're sitting in a warehouse. They're in a crate.
Why is that?
Well, capacity. Where can you land GPU at scale? So we can deploy 160 plus kW cabinets, 6 DGX, HGX today in our building. We don't have lead time and generator, power, cooling. We have that capability. We proved it with one cabinet. In December, we'll have 800 additional H100s.
It's not a part of the design where your product has redundancy built to the network topology level or something. That's why do you not need more gens, or you already have enough capacity?
We have enough capacity.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So
we have all the capacity in place.
Okay. So that's what
we can support.
It's not that the product doesn't need those things, because a lot of AI doesn't need. A lot of people are going away from UPSs. They're even going away from engines.
We can talk about that briefly, right? We've had a lot of cryptocurrency folks reach out to us, and what they've learned very quickly is, my gosh, do they have the power and bravery in the form of a checkbook? But what they've learned is that they want to take Apolo and they want to layer it in on top of their GPUs and basically create an AI farm, but they don't want to wait for generators. They don't want to wait for UPS systems. So they're building, and this might be a new
transmission lines, substations.
They're building tier 0 AI farms.
That's what I'm talking about.
Now, in my Apollo ecosystem, right, you have this nice little UI. It's super clean. You select down a cluster. You're now in a cryptocurrency cluster doing your jobs where you're taking a snapshot every 30 minutes. But if it goes down because the SLA says it might go down, it's 0.95, whatever it is, then that's fine. But then if you want to have your inference that's being done that's more unique, can't have it go down, right click, select a different cluster, and all of a sudden you're in Scott Data Center training those much more valuable types of market. Now, we're bouncing around a lot.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
But the cryptocurrency
This is a complicated topic.
It is.
And that's why we need a full 2 hours to unpackage this shit. You're not going to get to this on a stage all by yourself. And this is going to be
very complicated.
This is going to take a little bit of time for people. Are going to have to listen to this podcast twice. I'll have to listen to this podcast twice, right? Because we're not going anywhere. So this is where the change begins to happen, is when people get to listen to this stuff and they get to understand and study this information a little bit better. No one better to unpackage this stuff than you guys, but remember that we're trying to educate with this one. Some of these podcasts, I'm just they're entertainment more, right? Or inspiration to others, right? But this is one where this is just talking about the future. What we're talking about right now is At some point, everything that we've done has seemed to be complicated until it's not, because we do it enough to where we become comfortable with it because it becomes a standard. You stabilize an industry with it, you standardize on the industry with it, and you optimize the industry with it. We're in stabilization mode of this technology application. Do you agree?
I would actually not stay. They call it the digestion era. And I feel like
we're very early.
Yeah,
Yes.
we want to be the Pepto-Bismol to this digestion. So let's kind of. I
want
want
to shut up and stop asking questions and let you just go.
No. There's a linear thought process to this. I think it's going to make it easier for everyone to follow. So in this industry, we defined three major types of players. Okay. There are the big data center builders like DRT, Compass, right? They build for others, right? They can never deploy Apollo in their facility because the second that they do, they compete with their number one customer, Amazon, Microsoft, the hyperscalers, right? Now, they are in a very unique position because they can support the market, but they can never participate in it. They can build all the high density data centers they want, but it's always for somebody else. It's fine. They're going to be plenty busy. The other type of player that we see in this industry, and this is not derogatory at all, this is just kind of how we see this. We call them really, 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 really fancy laundromats. You put 25 cents in, you get H100 for an hour, less than an hour. But the challenge with that business, and we went after that market for a whopping 2 months, I think. Maybe it was very brief, right? Because we realized that there's...
You're using we loosely.
Yeah, I went after, you didn't go after this. My company tried to go after this market very briefly. And I remember we tried to bring a customer to you and you're like, Bill, this is not what we want to do.
Well, the economics don't make sense.
They don't. And we'll talk about that. And so what we're starting to see is, this is where part of the bubble is going to come in, is chasing the bottom dollar. We know it doesn't cost $1.50 to operate H100. And that business is dangerous because the only place that they can compete on is price. And that is really scary to me. So we took a step back almost immediately and said, hang on a second. We have something extraordinary. We have the third type of player in this market. And that is the one that owns the keys to the kingdom, the AI kingdom, through the software. That's us. Right? So we are in an extraordinarily unique position where we went to Ken. Ken came to me. I have the LinkedIn message, by the way, saved, when we said, let's do this. And so we validated this. Ken goes out and says, I'm going to put this Motivair 48U rear door heat exchanger. And NVIDIA says, you can only put 4 DGXs in there. And Ken's like, no.
Well, and
They meant geographically?
No, in a rack.
In a
You
rack.
can only put 4 DGXs in a rack.
That's the reference architecture. That's what they certified. That's what they designed. I believe they weren't in a facility that could support more. So their documentation, the lab work, the certification,
they were trying to solve for vanilla, right? They were trying to figure out what would be the most common application usage of that, right?
I actually don't know. I won't speak for them, but I believe they didn't have other facilities that would go have larger workload capability.
And number one. Number two, what he was asking, what we're designing together was so unique. And still to this day, there are not, if any, co-location managed services types of operators that have built what we've created. So 4.
The economics didn't work at 4. We could handle more, and we kind of wanted to prove that, but 4 didn't work. 5 was interesting. 6 was compelling.
Yeah.
There's an ROI that we said, okay, that dog will hunt. We can put in the effort. However, now we have other challenges. We don't have an MLOps layer, but we had a partner. So we're not going to be a software development shop. Also, we deviated from the reference architecture. So what's top of rack look like? Network storage, how are we going to accommodate that? So we have a Scott data reference architecture.
I promise I'll share. I'm showing the actual rack.
So we've deployed a row
I see it. Yeah.
that accommodates the components in a semiotic manner that mirror the design, but don't look like the design. So we have our own power distribution, our own storage rack, support IT. We're actually working on exploring if we can secure that intellectual property as a reference point. But yeah, so we had to have some ingenuity all in-house. And another point why in-house, we control the intellectual property. We didn't have a portfolio of IP. We had design that we own of our building original. The renovation, we own that. But this know-how, we were forced, and we had some scar tissue. So expensive tuition, little scar tissue in learning. However, we were so ahead, we could experiment. And we're small and nimble enough, and we have this entrepreneur itch that we can take some chances, small bets. We got a couple calls from NVIDIA. It was clear we ruffled their feathers.
Oh, really?
We continued to pursue. We weren't included in...
All places.
Yeah. Who are these punks in Omaha? We did not get included in their partnership program. I got an email earlier today. It's official. We are. But they came out and visited. We spoke to the gentleman, I believe it was Scott Ellis, who designs the DGXs at NVIDIA, explained. They came out and looked at our operation. They saw the capacity. So we have ordered 763 additional H100s. They will land in October and in December. So we'll have over 800 H100s. So 3 rows, 2 rows of 8 plus one of our original, and then additional in the first row HPC colo of other people's GPUs. So we'll have 3 full rows of AI platform with storage, and everything is being run under Apolo.
Now, so let's pause on there. You failed to mention that NVIDIA rewrote the reference architecture based on what you
I don't know if that's official yet, but that'd be a great
well,
attaboy.
there we go. It will be official when they basically allowed and blessed the design. All right,
Yes.
so let's go back to this.
We made right. We squared up, and they said, yes, you can do it. We now understand.
Okay, that's cool.
The 3 players, right? So now we're in this extraordinary position where now we've got this amazing architecture. They own the gear.
By the way, sorry to tangential, but something else that you, in a tour, the video you did with the manifold under raised floor. In order to do this,
That's right.
with the rear heat exchangers and multiple rows, we got to distribute water. Well, it so happens we have the stout, pretty hardy raised floor.
What are you, 36-inch, 48-inch raised floor? What do you guys think?
36.
Okay.
So, and we now actually showed a manifold. You showed a manifold in a video, but we have to distribute water. So we designed and then had great partners like Motivair, Worldwide Technology, NVIDIA, most recently Supermicro. That's where HGX for the next 16 cabinets. So that I sorry to interrupt you, but there's some nuances in how we are able to execute, but it's all internal know-how that really validates the design and deployment in partnership with Apolo.
So now we're at a point, right? So we have the physical infrastructure, at least the first rack, right? And we've got the software layer that sits on top of it. And so now we have this extraordinary opportunity to literally be a cloud provider. And again, not just renting a GPU by the hour, but the full services layer. I can't stress that part enough. Network, storage, compute, CPU, GPU, network ecosystems.
We also manage Megaport, so large data moving from point A to point B if they're not in our building already. Megaport is an awesome network to move data, large data, to our GPUs. Now,
we're expanding this environment, obviously, right? And so that means we found a way to monetize and we found a way to get to the customer. So let's talk about that. We learned very quickly that there's 2 different major types of customers. There's ones that are out there trying to build a model. Those are the people that are going to go after the H100s at the bottom price, really, because they're the ones that are trying to build the next compliance LLM or legal LLM or whatever it is, right? That's a little bit dangerous, right? Because you'll build it and then you got to validate it. Does it work for the market? Is it hallucinating? Is it actually proper, et cetera? The other type of customer that we are actively going after, now that's not to say Apolo can't be used for model building. It's fine. Inference. Within the next 2 or 3 years, 90% of all AI workloads is going to be inference-based. Now, what the heck does that mean, right? That means an organization using existing large language models, say 405B from Llama 3.1 or the smaller one, and actually applying use cases. So right now, there is very low-hanging fruit around generative AI that can make very quick impact for an organization. I'm not talking 6-8 months, just a couple of months as far as an ROI. Templates.
So this is called inference.
Inference. It's where you're actually creating a use case out of your data against a larger model. So like a RAG report, or here's an example, right? There's a VAR and they sell various types of services, and it takes their sales rep 10 hours to complete a fairly detailed pricing spreadsheet. With generative AI, you can literally have a private GPT model, the salesperson types him a stream of thoughts, and all of a sudden, that pricing template comes back 70 to 80% complete, 90% accurate.
In 3 minutes.
In 3 minutes. So all of a sudden, you have 10 hours compressed into 30 minutes, maybe an extra hour to validate everything, but you've completely compressed this down. Now, for that same VAR, there's going to be what's literally called a GPT template repository for network, for storage, for compute. Revolutionize a company's sales process by reducing the amount of time their salespeople have to spend on each pricing sheet. I'm not replacing people.
But is it a salesperson that's going in there and using the drop-down menus? It's not autonomous yet, or the AI says this is what we have to solve.
Not yet.
Not yet, but let's expand on that use case. So Kirk calls Bill Kleyman VAR services and says, I need co-location space in Arizona, Nevada, and California. I'm looking for these requirements. Now, right now, you're just typing this into a sales agent, right? And the sales agent, by the way, which we can modify its humanity level, is talking to you in real time and saying, oh, that's really cool. Here's some of the service. You don't know that you're talking to an AI at all. And so at this point, you've said, all right, cool. Now you're narrowing down exactly what you need. This AI, this conversational bot, now has all this information that's required. Now you are at a point where you're ready to sign. Actually, you know what? I think I want to explore what this opportunity looks like. The bot will say, all right, give me 1 second. We're going to have you connected with a human person to finish the process. And then they call someone, and that person, guess what they have in front of them? The spreadsheet that's already been completed that got started by the AI engine. So now this individual saved countless hours in the sales process to help close an opportunity that's incredibly accurate and fine-tuned because the customer was able to interact with this engine. That's a level of autonomy. Now, to that extent, we're scratching the surface.
We are so early. So it seems to me, I don't disagree on the inference. We've been learning. So not only on the facility, infrastructure, GPU management, dense packing, we've been actively, evidence-based approach, talking to customers, scratching away at use cases, really understanding, okay, what are they thinking as far as AI? Most have no idea. The sophisticated ones understand.
So we're using the AI, but we're not letting it lead us.
So here's the
business for the business. Yeah. What's the impact of the business?
We don't want to build a unicorn on an elephant on a unicycle, I like to say. We want to build an actual thing that moves the needle for the business. This is another bookmark in this podcast because right now you have a very unique perspective. Every single stage that I've sat on so far has been X amount of infrastructure people and one software guy, me, right? I have a unique purview into the actual workloads that are running, the ones that are actually making money. That
we'll give you a use case, real one.
Please.
So one of our DGXs, so 8 H100s, is running between 95 and 100%.
And that's probably close to 50, 60 kW per rack if you're running with 6?
Well, no, they're just one box. But
gotcha.
The full cabinet's about 70, but it's a customer, Fortune 500, one dedicated DGX. And what they're doing in the agriculture business, they have computer vision, computer learning, remote cameras, so at the edge, capturing livestock movement. They have 20 parameters they monitor. They can quickly identify the health behavior of an animal.
No kidding.
So intervention from veterinary, from cattle owner, from pen handler in this part of the world, that's a skill, but also probably a dying skill, and automation can accelerate. The fellows that came to us, they were taking almost 3 weeks to run their models and train. We have them under 2 hours. We think we'll be under 1 hour. So almost real-time information to inform the cattle owner. And we're talking, 20, 30,000 head of cattle. So these folks are growing this offering. We were the incubation for it. We think they'll be in an entire rack. So they will have 48 GPUs eventually. We were the experiment. They've now taken that same model and they've repurposed it for public safety. So imagine not looking at someone's facial recognition, but their body movements, and they can identify a weapon in hand. So when we talk about public safety, mass casualty, shootings, unfortunately, that's the world we're in. Those things happen. They now are repurposing that technology for community spaces, public safety. So because they've built high identification, high accuracy models for livestock, again, 20 different parameters, they can repurpose for other use cases. So that's, to me, a really interesting example of a company that's monetizing GPU and training. So I'll be fascinated because we are so early. I mean, this is the beginning of AI, in my humble opinion. The inference, as it accelerates, and 90% is inference, there will be additional training that bubbles up. It's not static. It's not like we have a transition of only training will now be inference and nothing else is happening. There will be workloads of training. So that, I don't know what the tsunami looks like, but it's a coming. I think every business is being impacted. That's pretty much common knowledge now. But we're seeing it in the front lines, both at the software layer and the use cases, and also practically talking to CIO, data science when they're talking about use cases and what does the first one look like? What's that use case? What's the context? We're able to show them that. We have great partners that are customers that are comfortable sharing how they're using Gen AI for their business.
We've created a flow, a channel. So just for definition's sake, my customer is the data center, and I consider end users to be their tenants. So we've got a great partner with WWT, for example. And just
outstanding partner.
Indeed. We just met with them the other day over at the Dell office.
They're a tenant of yours.
They're a partner.
Okay.
They helped us Well, go ahead.
No. It's WWT. We're currently running in their AI proving ground. Literally a drop down, and we're a cluster of theirs. So I've worked with WWT for a long time. Back in my days at working with VAR MTM Technologies, I competed against WWT, and I thought they were so awesome that I came back later in life and like, hey, can you help us out with this? My challenge is that I'm the software layer, but I understand everything that goes underneath. So you need like the architecture, the power, the storage, the racks. And I like what WWT does, and they're privately held, so they don't get swayed by big private equity. And I said, work with them. I trust them, and they were the ones that helped us out. Now, they're also creating a channel of customers. They're going to become a sell-through process for us because we're bundling this. We're creating SKUs, actual packages. And what is an extraordinarily positive cycle for WWT, their salespeople will sell the service and product of Scott Data Center. And the more that they sell, the more that types of infrastructures like Scott Data Center is going to buy more gear from WWT.
GPU is a service, but it's never just about the GPU.
Right.
There's a whole platform, right? There's architecture, there's storage, there's data gravity.
And
so, excuse me,
yeah,
but
please.
Met Bill in May of 22. He facilitates the intro to WWT. In September, we visit an 8-hour day in St. Louis at their headquarters. We left, jumped on the airplane, said that is the right partner. So Bill's done solid by us from day one. So has WWT. They've been an outstanding partner. So they helped from integration, tech acquisition, on-site support.
And business development, it sounds.
Well, it's
That's
beneficial.
Because it's accretive for them to.
Right.
Exactly.
Well, it's beneficial to them, right? Because
that's what you want.
Who's not
Exactly.
buying WWT gear? Amazon, right? Or Microsoft or Google. So what we found is an entry for folks like NVIDIA, for WWT, for Dell into the colocation data center space, where if a data center has the bravery to go out and buy this infrastructure, we will put the software on there and find ways to facilitate the architecture because we know what the use cases look like. And we now have deployment partners through folks like ProLego out in Omaha and another company called The Mind. These folks, let's call them certified Apolo integrators for what it's worth. And their sole job is to go to enterprise organizations and say, how can we help you build a better search function for your own data? How can we help you move the needle for your business? And we're doing MVPs, minimally viable products, like 20, 30, 40, 50 grand, not something that blows the budget. And that's your data. That's your product. You actually see the massive shift in how you can communicate with information, not just by getting a blue link, but asking you questions, for example, or getting templates generated. Now, I can't reiterate this enough. This is the low-hanging fruit today. This stuff moves the needle for businesses. What we found a way is to get those kinds of workloads into our facilities. Now, Ken is one of my ecosystem partners, right? I have a couple of other ones, like I said, in Amsterdam, one in Fort Lauderdale. And what's extraordinary about that is we and the customer have the freedom to pick and choose where they want to go. Now, let's pause on this and let's talk about the monetization part of it. Earlier, I said that we're not in the business of going down that rabbit hole of $2, $1 an hour. We're not. So because it's a true services architecture, think Amazon for a second, right? If you go to Amazon and just rent their hardware, that's kind of expensive, isn't it? You could probably go somewhere else. You go to Amazon for the services, right? For the MLOps layer, for the storage, for the networking compute. I don't know how else to say this. That's what we've created.
Built.
You've created that in a mechanical, electrical, plumbing environment with his software.
I did it with
to
the
support
software.
With a 20-year history of operating a tier 3 facility.
Only reason
100%
we were able,
uptime to then deploy this.
The only reason we could do this is because of the extraordinary foresight and luck of having a facility that was prepared for the kind of infrastructure, and the extraordinary fortuitous event that I had a software that was built for data centers natively and telcos and operators for them to deploy immediately. So these GPUs that now sit in these facilities have a usability. Like, we generate use cases in use. And what's amazing about inference workloads is they're not this spiky model training, right? Run for a little while, then they sit quiet. Inference builds.
It's just like generative.
It's built because inference actually allows you to continue to feed the data, to improve the model. And it's all, that template is not a one and done. You're going to keep feeding that data and it's going to keep improving and it's going to keep growing, but it's going to keep being so extraordinarily valuable to the company that you're going to keep working with that kind of architecture. So I guess I want to make sure that we follow along here. We found a way basically to create that kind of infrastructure from a physical environment as well as the software and democratize these systems so that Amazon doesn't always win?
It's a private, secure AI cloud that we own and control, but we don't look at anybody's data. However, we are aware of the customer's use cases because they share. We walk hand in hand. Interesting enough to me, a few things that we've learned. There's some inside baseball. We have vast data as part of our data solution for our AI platform. We've learned highly regulated folks. So financial services, big banks, as an example, payment processor, they have compliance issues. They want to bring their own storage. We welcome it. We're a colo. We own the building. We control the colo. So they'll drop their storage, cross-connect, they're on the GPUs.
No
Data
kidding.
has gravity. So we can accommodate storage, your particular storage as a customer.
This is a
bring it
super
on site.
hybrid solution. Do you see?
Exactly.
Like,
It's a service.
Are you guys assuming that this is going to be a new standard? And it's so at what scale will you be able to service it at?
This to me is why we say we're trying to cover the downside. The service isn't just about power and cooling. We don't have somebody else bringing GPUs in, and we don't know if they're a fly-by-night or if they'll stand the test of time. If it's a GPU per hour, do they have storage?
Though? Can they bring their own?
Well, we have opportunities, and we actually we have a few high-density HPC colos that we've welcomed in. We're working on. We actually have an agreement in place with a few, and they're bringing different chips, different brands, different architecture. We're going to be the managed services provider for that. But backing up, one of the things I want to just highlight, what we have learned, so Bill's right on point as far as the type of customers we have and we've seen. From a service perspective, though, distilling it down very simply, we see customers so instead of a CapEx deployment of GPUs, they're buying the service. They don't deal with the lifecycle management, the building, all the challenges that come with the data center operator, as well as the hardware, the chips, the technology evolution. That's on us. So we see one pathway of customer being the service consumer. We see the other, which Bill alluded to earlier, being the co-locator operator that needs guidance. And we have scar tissue and about a couple years of experience doing this ourselves. So we can walk into an operation, spend a little time, look at their architecture, their mechanical, electrical, as we've designed and built our own, look at the nuances, power distribution, and say, okay, here's what we'd recommend for you to get into the game. You said this over 2 years ago. Every data center will be an AI data center. But how do they do it? And who do you trust to guide you? Well, it seems to me, and this is an attaboy for our team, we've done it. We've been on the front line. We've been building the full solution with an outstanding partner. We can probably advise some folks as to how do you take your existing facility, be a bit forward thinking, if you have the bravery and the wherewithal, and we can head down the path to help them take advantage of what is very disruptive, I think, going forward.
There's a standing offer right there for anybody who literally wants to reach out to us, and we will help guide the industry. It's scary. It's scary to fork
What's the right size? What's the right, like, when does it make sense to pencil?
So we found out we can't work with every data center provider, right? I love some of the biggest builders out there. If you're owned by a big private equity, we are probably not the right model.
Why is that?
Because we go very far down the stack, and they don't want to do that.
They want to stay in core.
They want to
space
chase. They want to chase the gigawatts.
Focus is great.
It is. Yeah. There's plenty of space chasing the gigawatts, chasing the megawatts. I'll be perfectly blunt with you. I think Switch was the first people that I went to with the solution back when I was like, I think you should do this, and they're like, Bill, love you, champ. Keep at it. No.
Not ready?
They don't want to. They literally will not go down that far to the service
because
stack.
It competes against their cloud provider clients or something, or?
Yes. Effectively, their mission is to be the world's biggest everything, and they're so good at that's what they're going to do, right? They're going to be a company that builds, right? So for us, to answer your question, who is our ideal partner? It is like a shop that's got 1 or 2 locations, that's well-funded.
Or a handful.
Yeah, a handful of locations.
Call it Light Edge. They're a great partner of ours. We had a long-standing relationship. They're now, through their M&A strategy with GI Partners, I think they're up to 18 locations. And they have a few that bubble up with pretty large capabilities.
So you offer like a passport thing where you can sell into theirs, they can sell into yours? Is that type of thing?
That's been a historical kind of relationship, but I'm saying from advising, call it consulting, we can help a portfolio of data centers, colos, move in the direction
of private
AI.
equity. Look, and Mark Gonzi watching this, like, Bill, I'm brave. I want to do this. He comes to me and says, I'm willing to fork over $100 million and buy some gear if you put your software on and I become a cloud player. That's absolutely on the table. But I don't think that's where their goal is right now, because clearly look at how many.
Look at the consolidation they're still doing right now.
Right.
Exactly.
It's just not going to happen. So we're going after Scott data center size types of customers,
Regional players.
regional players, tier 2 markets have been amazing. And what we're doing with them is literally revolutionizing their business by showing how much of it they can own, and being on the softer side, the actual workloads that are generating the revenue and the dollars. So it's more about, what type of architecture and business model. Now, there are some caveats here. Ken has a managed services business that is extraordinary, deeply knowledgeable, intricate. That has helped him tremendously, right? Any operator out there that has a good managed services offering or an MSP or cloud offering, they're going to be the ones that are going to be able to be accelerated by what we've,
because they know how to monetize it faster.
Well, yeah, and they already have the service headcount, the infrastructure, kind of a workflow. Instead of creating from scratch, if you're, not to say only, but if your bread and butter is building, colo, mechanical, electrical, whether in-house or outsourced, and you had a service layer, that gets complicated.
Yeah.
We spent almost 2 full years refining our service offering as we've been learning on the fly with the GPU offering, the AI platform.
Well, what is the model in terms of now understanding how you kind of monetize it and how you make it very intuitive for your partners to be able to sell and as a pass through? But what is the increments? Like I consider cloud a utility. I believe it is.
Yeah. Let's talk about the package, the step on the gas.
Like, how does it work?
So we have a starter program. So we like to use the tagline "Step on the gas." GPU as a service. So we have a Start Your Engines package that we're now providing as an early, not quite minimum viable product or proof of concept, but it's enough storage, GPU allocation, network, support IT to get somebody for 90 days, a company, to use the infrastructure, use Apolo, get comfortable with developing and substantiating a use case to build on top of. So we're providing a 90-day trial run.
Okay, and in that trial, you're integrating everything and trying to kick the tires and make sure it all works.
Exactly.
And is that a high risk for an enterprise end user? Because they're going to...
Zero.
This is a herd mentality industry where people are going to stand at the edge of the pool and wait for someone else to do a cannonball and jump in before they do, but then they all follow. Plus, they normally start by putting their one toe in the water and figuring out how cold it is or how deep it is before they jump.
And that's what the Start Your Engines is. Put your toe in the water, low risk, use public information, not corporate sensitive, put us through the rigor of security, put us through the rigor of the MLOps performance, the infrastructure, the availability of GPU. Come tour. We'd welcome people to come. We've had many folks over the last probably 6 months coming to look at the one cabinet, which will now look like 17 total, actually 3 full rows.
So the science is awesome in terms of now I understand it. And before I pivot off of that or bookmark this part, what else would you guys want to talk about on that before I start asking now that I understand the capabilities, let's talk about the limitations, right? Because even your facility, the regional players, you have 20 megs of critical IT, but is it, you have enough geography to continue to add on to this? Because we're talking, it's starting in the early stages with small tranches of AI, but we're also talking to groups that are talking about 1 gig at a click.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm like, how does it scale?
Yeah.
Right. So, and is it meant to be a lifeboat to get to a different type of cloud that gets people to transition from this into a managed service environment, into a secure cloud environment that goes into a different environment altogether? Or what are we talking about? What's the goal?
So I think the first thing we need to do is talk about the risk associated with your question. Okay. So, I think a lot of the challenge, right? So CoreWeave charges $425 an hour for their H100s, right?
That's how it's charged by hour.
Yeah, it is. And
we're at $875 enterprise.
Okay.
That's
a
never been made
significant
public.
Difference.
It is.
But there must be a different, it's apples and oranges.
Storage network. I mean, there's a whole...
It's the service layer.
You have MLOps.
And the customers that we go after, those serious AI businesses, they don't blink an eye. Because it's not a GPU by the hour. It's the full package, the full service architecture.
It's simplified.
In Amazon, for example, you can get their GPUs, but even just to get the MLOps layer, that's an extra charge. And it's a double digits percentage extra charge. That is literally all included. Plus, you're not in Amazon. There's data locality, gravity, and so on. But so you heard the pricing, $875 versus a $425 an hour, and yet, hang on a second, we're continuing to blaze forward. So one of the things that we've learned in this industry and kind of looking at all of this, I've sat on stage multiple times now where I've had a massive data center leader come out and say, we're deploying 30,000 GPUs. We're deploying 33,000 GPUs. And I'm like, I have two reactions almost to me. I'm like, holy cow, that is awesome. And almost immediately, I'm like, holy cow, that's
a waste.
That's really scary.
Oh.
It's not a waste. It's really scary. One of the quotes from Walter Scott Jr. was always manage your downside risk, right? And it's a part of the conversation that he's talked about earlier. So my question is, okay, so you're a massive co-location. You are Kirk co-location services and Bill Kleyman AI, right? Pretty well funded and backed. I'm gonna go to you and give me, X amount of megawatts for 33,000 GPUs, right? And you're like, oh wow. Holy cow, that's amazing. Here's 15, 20 megawatts because I got that space. I'll build it for you, land your GPUs, and let's go after this business. Right now, here's the reality. Bill AI, let's say, is charging his users $1.50 for those H100s. That's not what you're charging me per hour to run those. You're actually charging me the full price. Now, I know that I'm running on subsidies. So I've two scary things that I start thinking about. What happens, A, when the subsidies run out? And B, what happens when in 18 to 24 months, the brand new H100 comes out and Ken data center, who directly competes with Kirk data centers, gets all those new H200s and can do the exact same thing that you're doing
At a fraction of the
at
price.
a fraction, complete fraction of the price. What happens to us? What happens to my 33,000 GPUs? What happens to my pricing model? What happens to my customers? What happens to the capital that is not perpetually patient?
And in
That's a
addition
big
to
fear. That value shifts fast.
in addition to that,
yeah, please,
excuse me, the architecture. So do we know, I'm not going to pretend to know, but the 33,000 GPUs that are being deployed, are they 4 HGXs in a cabinet? So that's hundreds of thousands of square feet. Is it dense packed with 6? So now let's assume we're following the NVIDIA architecture, reference architecture, 4 boxes.
Which is going to change, right?
But it's 4 boxes. We deploy that. That's several football fields. So you're not dense, but you've handled the number of GPUs. The business changes. Maybe the design changes. How do you rework your architecture? What if that Bill, no offense to Bill.
Like the hard part though, doesn't
Well, if Bill AI goes away,
well, so
what's your
Kirk,
on-floor?
You work in data centers all the time. And I remember I had customers come and go when I was at Switch. If you have to replace 200 or 300 kW, it's a pain in the butt. You'll do it. You're telling me it's
20
not
megawatts?
What if it's 10 to 15 megawatts? And what if it was custom designed for AI or HPC, and now you have to clear that stuff out and repurpose it entirely?
Yeah,
It's just a different problem set,
And the
which I don't know if people are aware of.
economic
That's the
hit.
risk.
Yeah.
That's
So
one of them for
my
sure.
challenge is how do you own that business? How do you know what they're trying to do? And what we've done is insulated ourselves entirely from that risk because he owns the gear, I own the software, and we own the entire process from watt to token.
But we don't have the standard, which is the soup doesn't seem to be done cooking on what that standard looks like.
No, but if you wait, you're just going to fall further behind. So what we've done is said, don't buy the GPU, no CapEx. You can consume as needed. Yeah. We have a financial services customer. Their initial requirement was 500 H100s, quickly growing to 5,000. My response was, and you might be there as well, I don't know that they fully understand the use cases. They're going to
give it to them as a service like a cloud burst.
Exactly. They're going to overbuy. If they spike, great. We can handle up to 6,000 H100s in our facility. Great. So we talk about limitations. So that's kind of a cap in what we look like today. We have a master plan in our 20-acre campus to grow another 20-megawatt facility.
Okay, so that was the question: is how do you scale?
We can
double. And what are the
40.
limitations to scaling? Like if you're in Omaha, realizing these data centers aren't necessarily as latency sensitive as some of the other ones, these AI ones, but if it's a cloud AI data center, it's still going to have latency concerns. How do you have the reach outside of a region, or what are the limitations for outside of Omaha that you could reach?
Well, part of the network strategy is Megaport, 400 gig network.
So that's how you boost that.
And they give us really great points of presences in other locations and other data center partners that are also running Apolo. So for them,
are they the regular carrier hotels you're getting access?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
They're redundant in our shop. They're in a couple hundred data centers. They're an on-ramp to public clouds. So if you want to move data from cloud to on-prem to the GPUs,
but if you want to go to 60 Hudson or 1 Wilshire, you could go either way from where you're at.
Exactly.
And imagine Apollo is the control plane laying over top and literally allows you to transfer data workloads between these two locations at a 400 gig pipe. Azure Cloud.
Interesting.
It's a really extraordinarily very versatile cloud.
So what is the thing that's holding this up from becoming more? Is it just because that's not how we do it, and we haven't adopted or embraced it as a new, more efficient, more economically efficient model? What is it that'll take it
It's
between?
scary. It's really scary. Like listen, I will go to a data center right now and say, we can make you a leader in the AI space, but you got to spend $100 million. I'm not going to buy it. I don't want to. Look, Apolo has been very lucky. We've got an extraordinary group of people that sit on my board, including folks like Jonathan Burney, who built Shiora. And, if I were to say to them, give me this 9-figure check, they would do it. But what am I going to do with it? It's going to take me at least 24 months to build anything, right? And then let alone I have to wait for all this gear, I need to go to the market right now. And that's why we've partnered with extraordinary data centers who are brave, who are willing to put that capital forward because they see and they've validated the business model. Like, it's not a blind, here's $100 million. There's a pipeline, there's customers, and there's actual demand for this stuff.
Yeah. So what does that strike zone look like for those clients? What is the ideal client? I think you said it. It's like 4 to click. I mean, what are you trying to? What's Nirvana look like? What's the most ideal client look like for you? Is it a megawatt worth of density? Is it 5? Is it a half? Is it 5?
We actually don't look at it that way.
No.
'Cause that's
So how do you look at it?
Change that paradigm. Forget
So that's what we're talking about.
Forget the nomenclature right now. Think cloud. Think Amazon for a second.
No. We have to. That's bullshit. We have to talk. You can't say forget it all without giving us something else.
No.
Swing into.
Yeah, we're going to get some meat on the bone.
So
but
what
we have
is
to think
it?
of it differently than
So what is-
KW or megawatt
So what
commit.
is it? So as I realize we're early stage, but what is it?
Well, an example, a commit of, let's see, we'll pick one that's pretty straightforward. The one that's a use case today. So they have 8 H100s. You heard about pricing, and that's a year commit, and it scales from there. So if they burst and scale midterm, we'll true up at the end of the year, but we have a year term.
Do they have limitations of what they can burst to? So if you're talking about that's 800 kW or whatever, you can say, hey, listen, you could go up to 100% or 200% what you need.
It's the number of GPUs, not the power.
Yeah, but you're sharing that, right? It's as a service. There's other people that are competing against those.
We have enough.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's the risk too, then, is making sure that you're not fighting over it.
I mean, that's a great problem to have. I hope we get there.
Exactly. Yeah. That's a classy problem. Mr. Scott would say it's a classy problem.
Well, I mean, that's where you want to be. You want this to be the new standard, right?
Exactly.
So if that's the new standard, we have to talk about how they're buying it and what increment it is. And I understand you guys are today trying to steer away from whatever the construct is.
It's not a megawatt, excuse me. It's the number of GPUs typically in a commit. What we've learned also is the on-demand isn't really a thing. So when someone says, I want on-demand, once they get a hold of H100s, they do not want to let go. So they're saying, can I sign up for a longer term? Which we like that. Mm-hmm. But keep in mind, we're learning and proving. So in 6 to 12 months, I don't think what we're going to tell you is different, but we'll be more refined. We'll be a bit more smarter, educated in the data we've captured from the use case and the customer profile.
So Kirk, I think to answer your question, what does that look like in megawatts? So he's got 20 megawatts. He's had people come into him and say, give me all of it. Multiple times over. He's like, no, because I'm sitting on a gold mine and I'm going to own that business.
If you break it down to a retail level, you're definitely going to, I mean, that's what cloud is kind of, right? You have the ability to layer those services on top of it.
Yes.
And it is way more valuable in a smaller increment. That's why I'm asking, what is the most valuable, what is the strike zone? Like if it's Goldilocks for everything we do. It's either too hot or too cold before it's ever just right. So what is just right?
I think what he's, so you can talk about some of the, like we've got the small, medium, large.
Yes. That's it.
Yeah, okay, there you go. Yeah. So
that's what I'm talking about.
Okay.
Because that's what people,
I
well, listen, when you go to
Sorry, we're
Starbucks,
missing
you don't
each
say
other.
this. You're like, hey, man.
Some of us may, but
so,
depends on the kind of
Omaha.
But before,
hey, come on now.
Before you answer, just so you're asking about like a traditional.
What's the product?
Right.
All right. So
you productize it.
Small enterprise would be 2 boxes.
2 DGXs.
So 2 DGXs or 8 chips. That's 16 H100s. Medium's a full cabinet. Large is anything beyond a full cabinet. And we've learned that talking to customers and understanding the workloads and use cases.
And does that have any difference to the cooling situation? Because I guess you don't, right? Based on the mechanical solution you guys are using, it doesn't matter.
Doesn't.
Okay, got it. So distribution of power, probably nothing to worry about either. Are you doing a busway program of some kind? Okay, so I'm just trying to figure out how do people scale with that without having to put their system and their environment at risk because someone else is scaling into them as well?
Well, there's going to be not every data center is going to work.
No.
Not every data, but there's many that can retrofit and actually do this. It's surprisingly more than you'd imagine. It just takes an opportunity to sit down and really think about, am I willing to commit this space? Am I willing to commit this capital to actually not all of a sudden, supporting this business, but participating in it actively and becoming a part of it. You'd be surprised. I mean, yes, if you're a concrete slab, you can still do some water manifolds from up top. If you got raised floor and you can get good tiles, you can do.
No one wants to put water above their racks.
No, I know, but that's why. Can you believe it or not? Right, raised floors are making a vicious comeback. Right,
it's for this reason.
It's for this reason, right? Because you can put those water manifolds underneath, and I think
makes it look pretty.
Right. Well, and to Bill's comment, not every data center will fit or move in this direction. One of the things we did.
There'll be a standard around what this product will look like at some point.
I believe so. I mean, we're moving in that direction. We reached out proactively to a few data center owner operators. A couple of them we've known a long time. One of them I chatted with the CEO and said, look, if you haven't heard, this is a while ago, about AI, like from your customers, like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
You will. I'm guessing you have. And this is what we're doing, open kimono. So if you have workloads, let's figure out a rev share. We'll support your customers. It could be on your paper.
That's what I figured, like a passport program. With
yeah.
yours.
So we can be the house, but we're going to measure how many of those we do. We're landing their first cabinet. So documents done. So we have the first instance of a separate colo dropping their HPC colo in our environment.
Do people use this more for like lab or DR or dev, or is this for production?
It's just production.
Is it really?
Production.
Yeah, I mean,
Oh, yeah.
yeah. That's what a serious AI business to us is somebody who comes in and wants to actually consume and work with these kinds of systems. No, this is very much.
So what's been your biggest challenge in converting people to? First of all, look, I'd like to think that just because I did go to public school on the West Coast, this is a really complicated product for me to understand still, right? And I'm not saying I'm advanced or I'm small, medium, large on brain. I'm probably hovering a little bit. Maybe my mom smoked too much when I was a kid. I don't know. I'm joking. But what I'm saying is, like, this is hard. Now you understand where I'm like, look, I want to scratch the paint here because it's going to take time for people to understand that what we think is one time is like leading the edge or ahead of the curve is going to always sometime, based on the adoption rate, based on the surge of AI, this will become a mainstream method or standard.
Yeah.
But the question I have for you is, why just the operators? Why aren't you going straight to the enterprise end users that are building in large homogeneous environments for themselves and saying, it still works for you?
Well, we can, but what we have seen, again,
But
small window.
your architectural topologies.
Well, we've seen several of those say, well, we're not a data center operator. That really isn't in our game. So we actually would rather have somebody else that does it for a living handle it, that has a track record. And also, we may buy the enterprise our own GPUs someday, but let's test drive.
Oh, I got you. You're a stepping stone too.
Yeah, very much can be. So then you have a leap to WWT, NVIDIA, Supermicro, so on, VAST, whomever, Apolo overlaid, but they learned, adapted, grew. In a year or two, they might understand, okay, here's actually our workloads. Here's our strategy internally. Here's what we can deploy. Okay, let's buy
Have you seen this
X.
having a positive impact on like PUE or anything like that? Is your efficiency of the way that you operate a facility benefiting?
That's a good question. I actually want to, one thing before you I love that question. Apollo runs on-prem at enterprises and in Scott Data and in the cloud. We have customers running Apollo in Amazon, so you don't have to use the Amazon ecosystem because it prevents them from being locked in. They like some of the other Amazon services. That's why we're there, not yet in the Ken's facility. But we are fully silicon diverse and fully distributed and fully agnostic from a hardware perspective, which is NVIDIA, Intel, AMD. He is never limited by the type of ecosystem that he can deploy. Now, the PUE thing, we learned quite a bit from the Motivare rear door heat exchangers. Why don't you tell them about the inlet and the outlet temperatures?
I think we're about 70 degrees in, 70 degrees out. We don't have to deploy containment because of the rear heat exchangers. So it's
you just
really
fishbowl the whole room, I guess.
Yeah, and so we have, in the one bay, which is approximately 8,000 feet, where we've deployed our initial GPUs, we have 12,000 tons of cooling. So our crack units. And they're not breaking a sweat. So we have massive efficiencies. The other thing we do is we publish, or we have a read-only access to our customers. They can see our live PUE. So we don't provide a average
calculation at the end.
They see it real time. So we're between 1.2, 1.3 up to 1.8 maybe, depending on the time
Does
of
it
year.
impact them at all? Like a colo person would
No.
use that as a mechanical uplift calculator. Okay, so for them, there's like
They're buying the
that's
service.
on you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Okay, I got you. Why even send it to them then?
Visibility. We're very transparent.
Yeah,
they can see if we're on gens, if we're off utility power, if we've turned off chillers and go to free cooling, which we do at 55 degrees or cooler. If we're conducting preventative maintenance, anything we do is transparent to the end customer.
We're in this for the long game. And I think that's a very important point to make, right? I think OpenAI recently released their 5 levels of AI, and I actually recommend, we'll leave it as like a resource for this podcast. Level 1 is traditional chatbots, and level 5 is called an organizational AI, literally an artificial intelligence.
There's 5 different types. I
There
thought
are.
there was 3.
No, there's 5 levels of AI, intelligence of the AI, right? I can't remember the middle ones, but I'll tell you the sandwich part. The level 5 is an organizational AI, which is literally an AI engine that can run your entire company. We're not there yet. We are barely scratching the surface of level 1 right now, these chatbots. And what I want to make sure that we understand in this conversation right now is that this is not a fad. And in case some
A fad,
right?
Yeah.
No, fidget spinners are a fad,
yeah.
right? This is not. And there's maybe some people who still think that it might be, or it'll blow over or whatnot. This is as much of a fad as when we stop riding horses and start driving cars, stop taking trains and start flying airplanes. This is not a technology shift.
This is a new vehicle.
This is a shift in humanity, right? And I'll go out here and age myself a little bit, right? In 1995, Alta Vista was released. In 1996, Ask Jeeves, and in September of 1998 was the first time that we could ask Google a question. And ever since then, every single one of us has been conditioned, and I don't use that word lightly, we've been conditioned to interact with data in a very, very specific manner. You ask a question and you get a blue link. It's your job to find the answer based on the relevant links that I sent you.
Or ask the question better.
Or ask the question better. Part of the reason why you could be successful in the past is you don't need to know the answer. You need to know how to ask the question properly. Now that's all out the window. Now what's insane is that for the first time ever, we can ask data a question and get a wholly originally generated answer back, not just with data, but video, audio, everything else in between. And what's really fascinating is this is literally a blink of an eye that every single person listening to this podcast is a user of generative AI if they've used Google or Bing in the past just a couple of months, because the first response you get, it's not a blue link anymore.
I'll date myself a little bit. Yeah. I vividly remember Rand McNally, paper maps, the yellow pages, and people saying this new internet thing. Do I even need a website? Like that? I believe that's where we are with AI. We're that early. People are contemplating.
It's interesting that you say that.
It's not like Siri. It's not like Siri, because Siri just now finally with their Apple 16, it's like, hey, our Siri is not very good at all. It's like a basic assistant that listens to your voice and does its best to respond. There's a damn good reason why they partner with ChatGPT to make Siri. We
have a lot of enterprises contemplating, when do I get involved in AI? Let's think about a strategy, but that's why I liken it to the beginning of the internet, where yellow page, do I need a website? Will I ever transact financial transactions on the web? No way. That's not even a thing. So that reluctance, the risk around it, I believe we've heard that from customers. How do they get involved? Because they don't understand contextually what a use case looks like for the business of the business.
So here's the cool thing. First of all great shit, right? So guys, thank you for coming, and obviously thank you for pouring all this stuff out of your brain. I'm glad that we had Data Cloud in Austin this week, because I got to hijack some folks.
We're going to do this on stage, and we're going to dive into this even more.
I'm looking forward. I mean, look, you guys will have already done it on stage before this podcast hits the street, but it's going to be something that you could reference for people to go follow, because they're going to have to unpackage some stuff, man. And look, this is a complicated thing, and
it is.
And you have to have, you're going to have to keep talking about this. We're going to have these conversations, because what I think now is, you're teaching the industry what is out there. You're opening the aperture and what they can see with regards to AI and cloud, right? But now what people are going to understand is why are they waiting on the sidelines? Because I'm the person, when the iPhone came out, I was in a BlackBerry Pearl for another 1.5 years. Does that make sense? Because I'm I like this thing. I don't need anything else better. And I love the application side of the world, but I was a late adopter. I would be like a laggard on that side of the bell curve type of thing. And there are a lot of people that are going to downsize their risk by saying, let's go see, because the first one through the wall is always the bloodiest in everything we do, specifically in technology. Now that we understand this technology, what is it that you guys think the timing of the adoption rate of this type of new emerging technology is? When does this become something that is like you said, it's not a fad, but when do you see it catching? Because, we could talk about the adoption rate of emerging technologies since the beginning of the first industrial revolution, where you could talk about, how long it took before electricity was adopted by 1 in 4 Americans? 46 years. Okay. Automobiles, 40. The landline in your home from the time that the third utility, which was connectivity, was created was 27 years. So if you look at that, how long did it take before TikTok reached 100 million users? How long until ChatGPT got 100 million users relative to what Instagram or WhatsApp or Facebook was, which was years. And then you have 9 months for TikTok, 5 days for ChatGPT. So we're seeing things pick up quicker. And what I'm asking you, it's impossible, right? You guys don't have a crystal ball 6 months out, but what do you guys think? And be hopeful.
I have a 2-part answer.
All right.
One I will provide, one I'm going to ask Bill to provide. It seems to me, well, the aha moment we recently encountered with one of our partners and the end customer. But before we go there, we have several examples, relatively small businesses that are contemplating AI, getting involved, getting engaged, developing a strategy.
It seems like a better product for them.
Well, yeah. Well, they're also concerned on culture. If you listen to media, some media, AI is replacing jobs, right? So people will be unemployed. The world's changing. So how do you squelch some of that and get real, have intellectual honesty with workforce efficiencies, not replacement? So part of the don't wait on the sidelines is you have an enterprise and culture shift. You have to educate your team members long before you start adapting. So
that's what I'm saying.
We've seen that frontline activity. Community Bank, we hold these with our partner Prolego. AI workshops to educate what is AI capable of today, what's the roadmap. We certainly provide access and visibility to our GPUs, use a model real hands-on so they actually understand what that looks like. But we have a lot of conversation around what's real and what's not, what's in the future. It's what Bill described as far as the 5 different levels. So really making it understandable and bite-sized for executives to understand this isn't taking over the world in their business.
It's just another alternative.
Exactly. It'll drive efficiency, but they're
train alternative to flying.
Oftentimes the people, though, the employees are concerned and worried about culture shifts. So there's apprehension, there's concern. So how do you overcome that?
You mean they're worried about their jobs?
Absolutely.
Right.
So there's a learning curve.
Yeah.
So there's a migration, but if you wouldn't mind, the aha moment, I think, strikes a chord on a great example.
So
paint with a broad stroke, man.
Paint with a broad stroke. We got basically through Prolego, through the partner recently, a customer wants to take down a few H100s, and they're working through the partner, and the partner is he's got a concern. He's like, oh gosh, these guys are like 875, was it? 875 an hour. There's just, oh my gosh. All right. Well,
and customer can get it lower somewhere else. Yep. Our partner is talking about, hey, you can get more economy somewhere else.
And this is a partner that's a customer that's already been on our system, that's been validating the stuff out. Now, like, all right, how much is this I want to deploy? And so the Prolego partner goes back to Scott DC. He's like, hey man, I'm concerned, this might be expensive. And then Scott's like, tell them what we're selling. Like, show the value of what we've created. And so don't change the price, just do that. And he goes back to the customer, doesn't even bat an eye at the price, literally comes back and says, I fully understand what I'm going into.
And the rest of the story is they've had data leakage, they've had data breach. So they're hypersensitive to data security, privacy, and said, we need to be on a private, secure GPU cloud. They have it. We can't find it anywhere else. We can't be in open systems, hyperscale public cloud. So the value prop resonates. There's a certain segment. We're not going to have every customer. That's unrealistic. But going back to your earlier comment, serious customers, serious folks digging into the integrity and future of their business and their data, we will work with those folks. We think that's a sweet spot.
We found a market, Kirk, and everybody that's price conscious but not price sensitive. They understand that there's a delta. They understand what the value of an Amazon-like ecosystem is, but all of a sudden, it's not in a major hyperscaler. It's with a partner they trust. Data locality, full control over the network ecosystem, full control over the environment as well, and they are literally creating an ecosystem that they can completely fence, geofence, do whatever they want. They have the freedom to democratize these technologies. They understand the value behind that, and the challenge right now for a lot of them is that no one else is offering a service like this. Yes, you could get just a GPU as a service. Yes, you can just get an H100. But where's the MLOps layer? Where's the services layer, the network storage compute, right? These folks don't want just an H100 for an hour. They want the full cloud experience outside of Amazon.
Okay. So this is exciting. So let's listen. This is the time where we get to kind of bring this home, and I don't want to pivot off this, but I want, like, we've just unpackaged a lot of stuff, and some people are gonna turn it off 20 minutes into it because they're like,
For sure.
you know, and then you have people with a propeller hat are like, look, this is what I get paid to do, and I'm gonna figure this shit out, right? So what is it, the things that you'd want to leave with these people that, do you want them to come engage with you, or are you trying to get them to scratch the pain? And like, what's Nirvana look like coming out of this thing? What does success look like for you coming off this podcast?
I really firmly believe that vision without execution is just hallucination. And I firmly believe that, you know, this industry is full of needle movers and brave individuals. And I don't want to, you know, disrupt the flow of this market, right? I do feel that right now what we're experiencing is there are some risks, right? It's an asset turnover ratio and depreciation cycle that we've never seen before, 18 to 24 months for these GPUs. So how are you
Really?
Yeah.
They turn over that quick?
Yeah, that's a part of the risk, Kirk. I didn't mention
I
it
don't
a
know
little
if I
bit.
realized that.
Well, I didn't mention it earlier, right? And that's the part of this challenge, right? So we talked about this earlier, right? You have the H100s, Ken's got the H200s all of a sudden, and you have zero time to turn a profit, let alone recoup the cost of this massive investment, right? So that's the ultimate risk here. Is these aren't boxes that sit for 6 or 7 years that you think is a traditional turnover cycle. So and that's not to put fear out there, right? That's just a concern. That's something we need to think about very, very clearly before you make big investments. But I think for everyone listening, look, if your model out there is to build facilities and just strictly chase the gigawatts, be cautious. Know who's funding the people that are taking up those megawatts, those putting those H100s in there. Be really diligent that you know what their business model is like, because the last thing you want is a 10 megawatt hole in your business when all of a sudden that company fails. There are going to be a lot of data center players like Scott Data Center that I want them to hear this message and just simply reach out. Just ask the question, where do I start? How do I begin this journey? What questions do I ask my customer? My goal is, you know, obviously to be a thorn in the hyperscale side, but also to democratize these technologies and give enterprise end users real use cases, that low-hanging fruit of what they can do with generative AI today that moves the needle on the business. Those long-winded, just find us and ask questions of where do I start? How do I do this? What does the business model look like? You know, if I don't have $60 million built, but I can put 10 million in. What can I build with that? You know,
it's not just that, but you guys are functioning off of what you know. There's things that you don't know. There's going to be people that listen that make a mechanical solution or something that says, "Hey, man, I know that you got it all figured out, but did you know about this?" And you're gonna be like, "Hey, that's accretive to what we're doing."
There's so much space for this. We didn't even talk about inference at the edge. There's a telco partner that's looking at us right now to do inference at the edge at 70 locations. They got the locations, they got the physical infrastructure. They didn't have the software that they could completely white label, put their logo on, and it's entirely theirs. We just sit on the back end and support them. It's a revenue share model. But whatever your architecture is, whether it's a small facility, little container somewhere at the edge and you want to do inference and AI, or it's a larger data center facility, there are places where you can participate in this and actually become a part of this market.
Yeah, a takeaway from my perspective, I don't disagree with what Bill shared. So we've been at this for roughly 20 years as a designer, operator, constructor, and operator data center. We have a reasonably good track record. We have never had a customer interruption. We've been at the AI effort. You know, this journey feels like a sprint. We've covered a lot of territory in a couple of years, and lessons learned. So from our perspective, I mean, one thing that Mr. Scott always used to tell me is make sure you remind folks, we're open for business. And when they sign the check every month to us, they're educating kids. So we fund STEM scholarships. So you should feel good about being our customer. But we're doing it. We're not talking about doing it in the future. We're actually executing.
Is the goal to expand on, Scott, or to look at like a Telex model, right, where they got into a very niche part of the industry, and then digital went and acquired them because they needed to have that. And they didn't want to stand it up organically on the inside. And acquisition seems to be the best way to kind of expand on your availability of services. So is the goal for you guys to continue to do this? Will you stay inside of Omaha? Or will you take this to, what if you have a client that has this need and it's in a different part of the country?
So if the client has the need and they're a colo owner and operator, we absolutely will work with them.
Okay.
If the client is an end user, well, they can land their storage in our shop, use Megaport to move data to our shop. So we can provide the service. The intent around the service is to stretch. We have customers, Interpublic Group, Fortune 500 media group. I share them because they've been out in the public saying we can name them. They've been with us since '08. Large corporate giant. So we have customers, they're in Manhattan. We have a lot of regional and local, but we have some national folks. The intent around services cast a wider net, stretch across the country, if not globally, to provide service. Well, part of that is know-how, our unique insight into what we've been building. But I'll go back, not just in the conference a couple of years ago when I watched Bill, but prior to that, we have so many innovators in the space. I mean, we have brilliant, talented people. I don't think any of us really understand what AI really means for us. We happen to be in the front end. We're small enough and nimble enough we could take the risk, right? So we're leaning hard into this. So we have lessons learned. There's no question, your point earlier, Kirk, there will be innovators coming forward with, more efficiency, better cooling solutions.
They're going to find something that helps improve upon what you're doing.
Absolutely. But we're doing it now. We're not talking about it. We've been doing it. We've been actively learning with actual customers, use cases, and getting our hands dirty on the MEP side, the IT stack, the actual storage. It's not as simple as, well, we landed GPUs, everything works beautifully. That is not the case. It's never just a GPU. Reference architecture, again, the ROI on the investment, we had to deviate. We couldn't justify ROI with 4 DGXs in a cabinet. That was not going to work mathematically. Yeah. So I'd argue our insight, our know-how, and our scar tissue is pretty valuable, at least today. And maybe for the next 12, 24 months, we're a bit ahead. People will catch up. This is interesting and novel.
Advantage.
Yeah, first mover advantage. But I also think we can help bring others along.
Yeah.
We're not going to be self-serving and swell-headed enough to say we're the only ones. We happen to have moved early. We had great exposure and a wonderful partner and a benefactor who believed in us. So, we have a visionary that led us and said, yeah, go execute. So we're able to move.
Sure.
But again, going back to the innovators in the space, I've attended more conferences in the last year, and I get to speak at a few if people will have me. And I see more innovation happening in the comments that people are sharing in the presentations. Hell, we're talking about modular nuclear reactors. I believe that's a thing for the future, right? And I'm not the only person that thinks that. So innovation is ripe, and this is disruptive. I think in 5 years, maybe the dust will settle, but we're doing it now. We're actively doing it.
I agree with that.
So, we're executing.
And I think the big point here is that we've shared a lot with you. We're opening our Komodo Insider Baseball.
Yeah.
We want others to participate in this business. Because the other reality is that just the hyperscalers are going to continue to write the rules. And right now we have this extraordinary opportunity to have a truly competitive service to what the major clouds are providing. And we're trying to tell people that you could absolutely have this too. And this is early enough where you can still get into this game right now and own that whole process.
I love it. Listen, I would say, what do you tell people you do for a living? But I would imagine that would take a little bit of time to explain, right? So this is a tough topic, right? In a tough industry that is not mainstream yet. And I believe, give us a couple more quarters. And I think that if we pass a shitty election cycle, and I think that once we get that behind us, there may be, a de-escalation with some tension in Ukraine, with maybe Israel, maybe even tension with China, but I do think that everyone's focus after the election will be on AI and the capabilities, limitations, fears, all the things that are optimistic about it, all the things that could take my job or do that. That's been an argument forever.
Right.
And there's always a new job that is a byproduct of this new emerging technology. We're in our 5th industrial revolution. History has proven to us that whatever gets blown out based on innovation is replaced with a better opportunity anyway.
We're wonderfully adaptable.
The use cases, I think, is what is trying to go mainstream.
Yes.
The technology and the concept is absolutely mainstream. ChatGPT itself. And I think my measure of when something goes mainstream is when South Park does an episode on it. And they did.
Are they doing it?
They did it. It's called deep learning.
Oh, okay.
And
that's a litmus test.
It is hilarious. And if you haven't seen it yet, okay, literally the credits at the end say written by Trey Parker, or like it was Matt Stone and ChatGPT.
Yeah.
And when ChatGPT takes over, and Kirk and Ken and everybody listening, it's so good. It's called deep learning. It's not vulgar. It's not one of their gross episodes. It's hilarious, compelling, and at the end of it, when you realize what ChatGPT just did, you'll be like, I don't know how comfortable I am about this right now. That was extraordinary. That's my gauge. If South Park does it.
I think we have a lot of stuff to pick through in this AI game right now, but it's an exciting thing. I think Dean said it best. This is the data center gold rush of 2024. And for the next few years, we're going to be watching this crazy process of innovation trip over itself is we're trying to figure out how to deliver the best for the clients with the highest level of value, right? So this has been very educational for me. As you can tell, I asked 1,000 questions because it takes a lot to fully try to wrap your brain around all this stuff. But there's no silver bullet for this. We're going to have future conversations.
No.
Hopefully there's some pushing. Hopefully we pulled enough strings here that where what you guys bring to the table at your guys' conference reminds them that there's a product behind all this. It's not just technology. There's an actual product, and it's sold in a way that makes it easier for people to make purchasing decisions. They have to understand the value.
Exactly correct.
And what people are used to now, based on what you're saying, and I don't want to paint with too broad of a stroke or trivialize it, but we're a pretty sophisticated industry inside of ourselves, and we're used to seeing a la carte menus for everything we want. If I want best in class for servers, I could go get this. Best in class storage, I could go to there. Best in class for this, I could go there. And what you're talking about is a big chicken dinner where you're offering all of that in one bundle of services. And people get a little bit concerned when they're almost like, there's sacred cows in technology to a lot of people. So they want to engineer around something. So this is a whole new concept. You're changing the psychology in the way that people make purchasing decisions. And that takes a lot of education.
It does. It does. And it takes a lot of bravery for data centers to understand you are going to go deeper in that services layer. You are going to own a little bit more. You are going to become a bigger player.
It's coming.
It is.
Yeah, it's here.
It is, Kirk. It is absolutely. And it's people, hey, look, selfless plug for Overwatch. It's people like you that are going to end up managing those kinds of environments.
We hope so.
The extraordinary talent that comes out of the U.S. military that then you put into all of these amazing environments. The kinds of folks that you work with, total tangent here, are perfectly equipped to handle this AI gold rush.
You know, I say to his part, you came from Switch, and Switch has had a profound impact on, I mean, they hire a ton of military.
Tons.
They're very pro-America, very pro-military. And you have to think about that. What does that mean, right? I mean, the most advanced weapons, machinery, and technology ever built on this earth have always been found first in the military. The very first data center ever built, a little history for you, I'm sure you knew this. The very first data center ever built was built in an engineering lab at the University of Pennsylvania in 1945. Built for and paid for by the U.S. government for national defense and intelligence. The first commercial data center. You know what they called that data center?
What was that?
The mainframe. So guess what IBM did? They made a product and they paired it up with American Airlines. And in 1953, created the first commercial data center. There is so much stuff about this industry that we're just learning, right? But this is an exciting time to be in the game.
Just a comment, if I may. Mr. Scott used to tell me he worked for two people in his life. Uncle Sam, he was in the military, and Pete Kiewit. When General Cartwright called back in 2005, he said, if there's anything we can do for national defense and security, we need to be involved. Let's do whatever we can. So that immediately was why we went that direction, but we share the sentiment.
The first real incredible piece of communication technology was Morse code, right? So we had a telegraph. Can you imagine how that revolutionized war when Abe Lincoln was able to talk to the front lines, talk to his generals? Right? Yeah. So technology has been at the forefront of everything in the military. I'm doing a documentary with Mike Sorelli. By the time this podcast comes out, it'll already have been announced on a stage. We're buying the Talent War Group, which is led by Mike Sorelli, very famous Navy SEAL Team 6 commander, SOCOM commander. And we are doing a documentary about the birth of the data center industry from a national security perspective.
Wow.
Lots of stuff. Yeah, we're going to try to show that at South by Southwest. But there's a lot of cool stuff coming out. This industry, it's punk rock. This is the time to get in. What you guys are doing, you don't need a college degree to go learn the things that you guys are doing. No. You need immersion. You need to show up with a critical question attitude and the ability to be excited about doing new cool shit.
That's right.
If you can do that, you can move the needle in this space. Do you agree?
Absolutely. A bias towards action.
I love it. I love this industry. I love being able to have these conversations. Thank you for getting on a plane and coming and visiting with us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming. It's good seeing you on stage today. I can't wait to see you on our stage next week.
I can't wait. Thank you for giving.
I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be fun.
You haven't been to one of these?
I have not.
I've been sharing the limelight. We've put Omaha on the map.
Nice.
Successfully, I think. And Ken's has, first
New
of all,
Oracle of Omaha right here.
In case,
No.
In case you haven't noticed, he's got a great voice. Like, I mean, the podcast is going to sound wonderful, that nice little baritone. But no, we're excited to share this message. We're excited to get this out to as many people as we can who want to listen, who just want to participate in this market. We're not here to hide anything. There's a reason why we're so grateful to be on this show right now. Like 2 hours flew by.
Yeah.
It's because there's a lot to tell. We've got our bloody knuckles, as you like to say, learning from the trenches. We want to share that information, and we can't cover it in 2 hours, but there's so much that
Three dudes with ADHD can't get it done in 3 hours? 2 hours? Are you kidding me? Unbelievable. I didn't see that coming.
Challenge accepted.
Hey, listen, Awesome podcast, guys. Thank you for dropping all this knowledge on us. I hope that the listeners get an opportunity. And if you listen, please subscribe, please follow this, please follow them. Please take the time to scratch the paint and be a professional. If you're a professional athlete, you'd be learning what the means and methods of the sport as it adapts would be. We are professionals, learn this sport. This is an exciting time to be in the game. So thank you for taking the time to come out here, sharing this story. Thank you for joining the Data Center Revolution, boys.
Really appreciate it.
Appreciate it, man.
Thank you.